You're about to learn everything there is to learn about the PIRC defense. No need to buy another course. I want you to watch the full video, apply the middle game plans that I teach, then leave a comment when you see an increase in your ratings.
Our opponent is 500. We're going to be kicking off our peer defense speedrun. I'm going to be using the peer defense in this video, and that starts with pawn to d6. You could actually play this opening against anything that white plays. After a move like knight to f6, I'm actually going to immediately play this move and attack this unprotected pawn. My opponent decided to guard the pawn, and the typical peer defense setup that I want you guys to use is just to play pawn to g6, fianchet to the bishop, and get your king castled. Some ideas I want you guys to keep in mind. In the park, he just plays d3, by the way, blocking out his bishop. That's not good. Is after our king is castled, a move like bishop to g4 to get rid of our bad light squared bishop. The light squared bishop is usually the worst placed piece in the pure defense. So getting rid of that is a good idea. Another thing that we want to keep in mind is pawn c6 followed by pawn b5 will be one of our main attacking ideas. Putting a pawn on e5 will also be one of our main attacking ideas. He developed his bishop. Now let's just get our king out the center of the board. And this is like the first thing that you guys need to keep in mind. What I'm doing here is I'm getting my king safe first and foremost. Once I get my king safe, now it's going to be time to start my attacking move. But there's no attack just yet. We have to complete our development first. So he plays bishop to e2. That's definitely a sign that he wants to castle on the king side. But as I told you guys before, the light squared bishop is usually the worst placed piece in the pair. So just putting your bishop on g4. And what we're basically going to be doing here is we're going to be exchanging our bishop for a knight. We're not going to be taking the knight until he plays pawn to h3 though, because we don't want to just move the same piece more than once in the opening stage of the game. So he castled the king. Let's finish our development. All our pieces are now developed. We're going to be playing moves like e5 or c5 or c6 followed by b5. Like once you manage to get a setup like this, it is very, very flexible. The plans are so easy to play, and your king will always be safe. It's like if you look on my king, it's going to be so hard for white to get to my king, let alone start an attack on my king. Now he plays knight to d5. That's definitely an interesting move because now there's two pieces on my half of the board. And you guys know how I feel about pieces on my half of the board. We don't allow pieces to be on my half of the board. Now, my first reaction was to take the knight. After he takes, I take the pawn. But once he moves his rook to b1, hits the bishop, I have to move the bishop. Then he's going to take a pawn. With that being said, I want to force him to do the captures because keep in mind, to take is a mistake. You only want to do the trade if it improves your position. So what am I going to do? I'm going to play pawn to c6, forcing him to move his knight yet a third time. Now, if any one of you guys know how to do any form of mathematics, if he moves his knight 3 times, capturing my knight that has only moved once, then that would mean he already wasted 2 moves. So he took, and another idea that I want you guys to keep in mind if you're going to be playing this opening is anytime a bishop is on g5, or you just have the option of do I take with the knight? Do I take with the bishop? Do I take with the pawn? Please take with the pawn. Yes, take with the pawn, attack the bishop, double up your pawns. And the reason why this is so good is because, first of all, it is so easy to get rid of this double pawns. I literally could simply play a move like f5 and I don't have the double pawns anymore. Second of all, we're not the only one that has open file on the chessboard. Now, it's very important that we look on the opponent's last move. However, he just pulled his bishop back to f4. The bishop is pointing towards our pawn that is unprotected. So it's very important that we defend this pawn. How I'm going to defend this pawn, I'm going to play the move knight to c5. Moving my knight out the way so that way my queen guards the pawn. Now, you will have your knight on c5 majority of the time when you play the PIRC defense. It will also transpose into a King's Indian defense majority of the time. A move like pawn to b4 is one of those moves that you want to be aware of. So pawn to a5 is also a thematic idea. Like once you have a knight on c5, you kind of want to play pawn to a5. So that way there's no pawn that is able to come to b4 and attack the knight. He pulls the bishop back to e3. I guess he really wants to capture this knight, which we should not have any issue with, because if he takes and I take, then he's giving us the bishop here. And again, that's also a double pawn that is very easy to get rid of. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by playing pawn to f5. We already got a double pawn. We're getting rid of the double pawn, but we're also opening this long diagonal for our bishop. So I'm threatening this unprotected pawn on b7. So he has to be careful here. Plus, I'm now attacking this pawn twice. He's only guarding it once. Let's see what he plays. Pawn to e5. That's an interesting move. That's a very interesting move. My opponent is trying to do a tactic called removing the guard. Now, how it works is I'm actually threatening the e5 square twice. He's only guarding the e5 square once. But if my pawn takes on e5, I no longer guard my knight on c5, and that would be like a drawback mistake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to solve this issue with the most aggressive move possible. A lot of you guys are not sure on how to find the best move in chess, but once you're out of the opening stage of the game, once it's time to start looking on what the best move is, you always want to try to play a move where you put a piece on the opponent's half of the board. So for example, here, I put my knight on a4 and I'm currently attacking the unprotected pawn on b3. If he spends a turn to guard his pawn on b2, then I'm going to be able, which he did, he plays rook to b8 to guard the pawn. Now once I take on e5, my knight is no longer hanging, which means just like that, we're ahead by a pawn. Now he plays pawn to b3, and this is something that I have been saying. This is why persons at the lower level blunder. All they do is they think about the move that they're about to do. They think about what is this piece about to do, but they don't think about what was this piece doing. Like, pawn, what are you doing on b2 before I move you to b3? Pawn was covering the c3 square. This is called a drawback mistake. Pawn is no longer guarding the c3 square. Now I'm able to hit him with knight to c3. This is completely winning. Like, there's actually a lot of ways in which I could win this position. Taking the rook is one of them. Taking the bishop followed by playing pawn to e4, putting pressure on the pin piece, is also one of them. But then the opponent decided to play queen to c1, making another drawback mistake. If you do not learn anything from this video, even if you do not learn the PIRC defense, because there's a lot of other stuff to learn apart from the opening, stop blundering with the drawback mistake. Before you make your move, I want you to put the same amount of effort into thinking about what your piece will no longer be doing as the effort that you put into the move that you're about to play. For example, he's just like, okay, he's attacking my queen and my rook. Let me just move the rook. But what was your queen doing? It was guarding the bishop on e2. Now I take on e2, checking the king, attacking the queen. Not only am I ahead by a bishop, you're also going to be losing the queen. This is now just GG's, because once he moves his king, I just need to take the queen here. And because I'm ahead by a queen, the goal here is to just start trading the pieces off the board. And this is just going to be GG's. Now I'm going to checkmate his king in a few moves. So he took the bishop. First of all, whenever you're ahead in material, we're trading pieces off the board. So we're going to be taking this knight. Bishops are better than knights, but being ahead in material, we take that knight. Now, once he takes with the pawn, we're not going to try to deliver a checkmate by attacking his king. I'm going to play the move queen to h4. Now, when it comes to attacking someone's king, you want to ensure that you attack the pawns and the squares around the king. If you're able to, for example, I'm attacking h2 once. If I'm able to attack h2 twice, then that would be a checkmate. How am I going to attack h2? I want to play moves like bishop to e5, threaten a mate on h2. He moves his rook to g1. Let's play pawn to e4 here. The plan is to move my bishop to e4, threaten a checkmate on h2. But let's see if he's going to defend against this. Okay, so he captured on e5. Let's play bishop to e5 here, threatening checkmate on h2. He has to be careful. He has to play a move like rook g2 or pawn f4 or maybe rook g3, but there's not a lot of ways to prevent mate here. Okay, he did find rook to g2, and now I want to use a tactic called removing the guard. Like, the rook is the piece that is preventing the checkmate, so I'm going to push the pawn to f4, because my plan from here is to push my pawn to f3, attacking the rook, forcing the rook to move, and then once the rook move, I'll be able to take on h2. If he does move the rook, then I'll take the rook. He found f3. That was not bad. Now I'm going to play the move bishop to e4 here. I'm now threatening checkmate in two moves, so he has to be careful. I also want to attack this pawn on f3. Okay, he captured pawn on f4. That's just a free bishop, by the way. So now I'm just going to take here and I'm completely winning. So he moves his rook to f1 to guard the pawn. And to continue my attack, I just need to bring the rest of my pieces in the game. For example, pawn to f5 in this position. Now, when it comes to bringing more pieces in the attack or opening lines for your pieces, you definitely want to be thinking about pawn breaks. For example, if he takes, my rook joins the attack. If he doesn't take, I take, and my rook joins the attack. He did take, let's take on f4. Now, my rook is in the attack. I just want to have as many pieces on his h2 pawn as possible. And then that's how I'm going to eventually checkmate him. He plays pawn to h3. That should make it a bit more easier because now I'm able to play rook to h5, attacking the unprotected pawn, which is not easy to defend. Okay, he puts his rook on h2, guarding the unprotected pawn. Let's put the bishop back on e5. Now I'm attacking his rook twice. He played rook to f2 to guard the pawn. Let's just bring our final piece in the attack. Like for a successful attack to work, you want to have every single piece in the attack. He moves his king, but now I'm able to play bishop to d4, pinning the rook to the king because I have a dark squared bishop. Now I'm threatening moves like rook to e1 or even rook to e2 to apply more pressure to this pinned rook. He's in trouble. Okay, he moves the king to g2. Now I'll play rook to e1. His king is now in what we call a mating net. Like I'm already well, my opponent finally resigns. We're gonna be playing more pair defense against players at the 600 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now in the 600 level. We're still gonna be playing more pair defense. Let's go d6. So knight f3, we develop the knight, hit the pawn, he guards the pawn, and then we're going to be going in our simple setup g6, bishop g7, castle the king, regular stuff. Bishop c4, let's go bishop g7 and castle. Now, if he plays d4, that's an indication that we can sacrifice, followed by playing d5. Very, very nice idea. He doesn't have to play d4, by the way. Like, we could take knight take, then d5, but it's best if we wait until our king is out the center of the board for us to go with this idea. If he plays d3, then we won't be able to do it. Now, there's one thing that I want you guys to keep in mind when it comes to the Pyrrhic defense is our light squared bishop is our least active minor piece, or it's just our worst minor piece. So if you're ever able to play a move like bishop to g4, playing the Pyrrhic defense, just pinning the knight or just putting the bishop on g4 so that way you're able to take the knight on the next move, then that's good. Another thing to keep in mind is it's very important that you wait until the opponent plays h3, then you take the knight. So don't just put the bishop on g4 and then any move they play, you take the knight. Now that he plays h3, that's when I'm going to take the knight. He has to take with the queen or else he's going to get double pawns. And now I'm going to play the move. Do I play knight c6 or knight d7? Let's play knight c6. The knight covers both d4 and e5. So I could go knight to d4 and I could go knight to e5. He plays knight to d5, applying some pressure to my knight. And if this knight ever takes on f6, we're actually going to be taking with the pawn, so that way our rook gets the file. I'm thinking of playing either knight d4, hits the queen, hits this pawn, but then he just plays queen d1, and I have nothing. I'm also thinking of playing the move knight to e5, hits the queen, hits the bishop, which means that's a fort. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be winning any material, but I get back the bishop, and he has the bishop here. With that being said, once he moves the queen somewhere, we get rid of his bishop and we're fine. He decided to take on f6 first with check, and as I stated before, we want to take with the pawn so that way our rook gets the file, and then eventually we should be able to play f5. Now, when you play f5, the whole idea is not to take back with your pawn. So I have to play a move like queen to d7, followed by f5 here. So he moves the queen, and here I'm thinking of just eliminating the bishop immediately and then just play queen d7. Because if I go queen d7, he pulls the bishop back. So let's eliminate the bishop. And then once he takes back, we play the move queen to d7. Now, f5 is an idea, so that way our bishop gets back the long diagonal. But I want to ensure that my rook gets the file, applying some pressure to this pawn on e4, which is unprotected. His c4 pawn is also unprotected. So queen c6 would attack two pawns at the same time. Now, he plays queen to h4. That's an indication that he wants to play bishop h6. Now, in this position, I'm actually going to play the move rook to e8 because rooks needs files. It's very important that you get all the pieces in the game. Bishop to h6 is not threatening, and rook e8 is a good way to meet bishop h6 because we are able to pull the bishop back to h8. He plays rook to e1. He's guarding the pawn. Now I'm actually going to play the move f5 because his rook is unprotected, which means this pawn is pinned. With that being said, I am applying pressure to the pin piece in this position. So oh my lord, he plays b3. I was just about to say how well this guy's playing. B3 has to be one of the worst moves on the board, unless he sacrifices queen. He plays B3, just completely allowing me to capture a free rook. That's crazy. But these are the types of stuff that happens in the PIRC defense because we start by fianchettoing our bishop. Now he plays bishop to D2. His rook is attacking my bishop. I'm not going to give him the bishop. Let's just pull it back. And just like that, we're ahead by an entire rook. With that being said, we're now looking for trades. He plays F3. Let's take on E4 first. The rook on A8 is actually the only piece that is not taking part in the game. What should we do? Should we put it to D8? No, because it will still be pointing towards a pawn. What we should do is play rook to E6, doubling up the rooks along the E file. Now, every single piece is going to be taking part in the game, and I will win this weak E4 pawn. So he moves his queen to g4. Didn't really do much. I guess he thinks he's pinning my rook, but let's just swing the other rook in the game. Now I have two pieces attacking e4. He has two pieces guarding e4. With that being said, in order to win the e4 pawn, I need to play moves like queen c6, applying more pressure to his e4 pawn, or hit him with pawn to f5. Hitting the queen, the pawn is not going to be able to take because his rook will be hanging. Now he plays bishop g5. Let's play pawn to f5 here. He has to move the queen, and then once he moves the queen, I'm going to take on e4 with the rook. And the reason why I'm taking with the rook is because I'm ahead by an entire rook, so why wouldn't I want to be trading pieces off the board? So he moves the queen to h4. Let's just take on e4 here. He has to take with the rook because I'm also attacking his queen. But once he takes, okay, I'm actually thinking of taking with the pawn here. Like I could take with the rook and hit his queen, but taking with the pawn is actually very, very straightforward. It's not just a very obvious plan. I'm just going to push the pass pawn up the board, which is why he plays bishop e3. He doesn't want me to push the pass pawn. But now I'm going to play pawn to d5. I want to play pawn to d4 on the next move. This is a pawn break, by the way, which means if he takes the pawn, my queen takes, and it is opening more lines for the rest of my pieces. He decided to play pawn to c4. My queen is under attack. Now I'm going to play the move queen to d3, attacking the unprotected bishop because all I want to do is push my pass pawn. Now he took a pawn. That's a bad move, by the way, because all I need to do here is just push and my pawn will become a queen. Like, if it was a normal game, I would also just play pawn to b6 and the bishop is trapped, but let's just push the pass pawn here. Maybe he's going to sacrifice the bishop for the pawn anyways, or maybe he's going to wait until I push the pawn, then pull the bishop back. He plays queen to g3, which means if I do push the pawn, I will lose my queen. He's trying some tricks, but I'm just going to check his king first. And then once the king moves, look what happens once the king moves. His king and his queen is on the same diagonal on a dark square. I do have a dark squared bishop. Bishop to e5 wins the queen. The same bishop that wins the rook is the same bishop that wins the queen. This is called a pin, by the way. His queen is not able to move because it will expose his king. And then once he takes and I take back, I'll just queen the pawn and deliver a checkmate. So he decided to sack the queen. Let's just take back. Two moves away from queening here. Simple win here. V4, pass pawns must be pushed. Moves the bishop. Let's queen the pawn. Bishop has to take, but his king is already in a little net. Once I play something like rook e2, queen f2, queen g2 will be mate. So rook e2, putting the rook on the second rank, applying some pressure to this pawn. I'm going to go queen f2, followed by queen to g2. And there's nothing he could do to prevent this, by the way. So I could actually pre-move it. a4, queen f2, queen takes g2 on the next move is a checkmate. With that being said, we're going to be playing more PIRC defense against 700 level players. So stick around. Our opponent is now in the 700 region. He started off by playing e4, but we're going to be doing pawn to d6 against e4. It's the same setup. Pawn goes to d6, the knight goes to f6. This one against e4 is the PIRC defense. Now, once they play knight to c3, there's already a sacrificial idea where we take on e4, the knight takes on e4, and then we play d5, and we already equalize the position. I do not recommend this sacrifice though if the king is not yet castled. So I'm going to be focusing on castling my king. So let's play g6 here, just completing our setup. Bishop goes to g7, king is castled, knight goes to d7, just regular stuff. So now he plays d4. Now we go bishop to g7. This one is the PIRC defense. Whenever they play d4 first, it's the king's Indian defense. And if you play the setup as white, it's the king's Indian attack. So bishop to e3 was played. Now I castle my king. It's the same exact setup. Now we're going to be going for the thematic sacrifice on e4 if the opponent just does not do anything about it. So he decided to play queen to f3, which is definitely an interesting move because the thematic knight takes e4 does not work here. Because if he takes with the queen, I won't be able to sacrifice. But continuing with the PIRC defense setup, I'm going to play the move knight to d7 in this position. And then he decided to castle on the queen side. Now, if your opponent decides to castle on the queen side, if you play the PIRC defense or the king's Indian defense, you want to start your attack by playing the move pawn to c6. It's very important. The whole idea of playing pawn to c6 is not only supporting the d5 square, you're actually supporting the b5 square. What we want to do is we want to play moves like b5 and a5 and a4, because what we spoke about is whenever there's opposite side castles, it's going to be a crazy game. So if they castle on the opposite side of you, you have to start your attack. With that being said, our dark squared bishop will turn out to be one of our best pieces in this attack. But let's see how it goes. And then he plays bishop to g4. Makes some sense. It's not a bad move. I'm not gonna lie. If I'm able to get a bishop here, that would be a skill. So I kind of want to play knight b6, but he's probably going to just pull his bishop back to e2. And then if I go here, he plays queen to g3, and I'm not really seeing what I have. So I'm just going to continue with my attack. Let's go pawn to b5. Everything that I'm doing, by the way, is super thematic, so ensure that you're taking notes. Once he moves his bishop out the way, I'm going to play yet another thematic move. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to play queen a5, but queen a5 is a very, actually, maybe I'm gonna play queen a5. Let's see what he does first. So he pulls his bishop back to b3. Okay, that's not the square for the bishop. That's definitely not the square for the bishop. So I want to be able to play queen to a5 because honestly, the rook is on the same line as my queen, and that's a bit uncomfortable, especially since he's able to play e5. And if I take stakes, I will not necessarily be able to take because my queen is going to be hanging. But I really want to be able to play a5 followed by a4 because that's going to trap his bishop. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my queen on b6 instead. I mean, it's just, this is just patterns, and I'd also say common sense. Like, you don't necessarily have to calculate too much. If someone's rook is on the same line as your queen, just get your queen off of there. Now, pawn to d5 is actually a positional mistake. And what I mean by this is, I want you guys to look deeper in the position and see exactly what just happened. He plays d5. Have a look on this bishop. Dead. Have a look on this knight. Dead. Have a look on this rook. Dead. So we're definitely not going to take on d5. Obviously, to take is a mistake, and we only trade if it improves our position. So we're not going to be trading. We're going to be pushing the pawn to c5. Now we're actually threatening to trap the bishop. Our dark squared bishop is also very strong on this diagonal, and my knight gets the e5 square. Mm. He pulls the queen back to e2, and it's now GG's. Pawn to c4, traps the bishop, and just like that, we're winning a piece. So if you're one of those lazy persons out there, I mean, it's okay to be lazy. Nothing is wrong if you're lazy and you want to use one opening so that way you don't have to be worrying about all of these opening theory and all of that stuff. Just play one opening and then focus your energy on end game and middle game. So let's take on b4. We're now completely winning. He decides to play queen takes, and I want to play bishop to a6, but queen to b3 is just obvious. It's just obvious that he's going to play that move. Another thematic idea that I want you guys to keep in mind is knight takes e4. It does work here because there's queen takes, but if knight takes, then his b2 pawn is hanging. So let's start by playing rook to b8, applying some pressure to his b2 pawn. Now I'm attacking b2 twice. He's only guarding b2 once, so he needs to be very careful. Bishop to a6 is my next move. He plays b3. So now we're going to hit him with bishop to a6. This is called a tempo, by the way. We develop the bishop and we attack the queen at the same time. And that's a free pawn on f2, by the way. So now he decides to move the queen to a4. It's not a terrible move, but we're going to be continuing our attack. Now, the advantage that I have in this position is called the initiative. What I mean is, if you play an attacking move and then the opponent responds to it, and then you play another attacking move and the opponent responds to it, it's the initiative. You should always try to have the initiative when you're playing. Always try to force the opponent to respond to your move. So once I hit him with knight to c5, he is still forced to react to my move again. And I think a3 is the only safe square for his queen. Because if he puts his queen on the same line as my bishop, then he's toast toast. Okay. Okay, he's trying to be slick, but that's gonna lose him another piece. And I'm already ahead by a piece in this position. Now he's bit or maybe he thinks his queen is trapped or something. But my knight is pinned, but here's what we're gonna do. Just do some math. Do some math. I'm gonna take 9 points. He's going to take 9 points, and then I'm going to take 3 points for free, attacking his 5 points, and his 3 points is still going to be here under attack. So he's about to lose a lot of material. He took my queen. I take on c3. Now I'm ahead by 2 pieces, 4 points. I'm attacking his rook, hitting the unprotected pawn, and I'm attacking the bishop. So this is now just game over. So he took on a7. So basically, what he saw is if I take his rook, he takes my rook. But we're not trying to trade, we're trying to win some material. So all I'm going to do here is move my rook to b7. Now his bishop and his rook is under attack. And I'm not going to lie to anybody here. Like, that's a rook, but I don't even want the rook, to be honest. I'm trying to checkmate the guy. For example, knight takes e4, his king is not able to go here. I'm trying to take on a2 with check. There's a lot happening. Okay, he decided to save the bishop. So we may just very well take the rook. And now we're going to be ahead by like what, 5 points once he takes the knight? He didn't even take back the knight. That's kind of crazy. And not only did he not take back the knight, he also blundered his knight. So now we're ahead by 11 points. No, it's just GG's. Okay, he moves his king, hits my bishop. I want to take on e4 with check. And then once the king takes, I takes, but then he's going to take here. I don't want to lose any material. So let me pull the bishop back to h5 first, just saving my knight. If he plays f3, then that's a good move. Yeah, that's a very nice move. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm still going to sacrifice on e4. This is called a discovered attack, by the way. Once I take on e4 with check, it reveals the bishop to attack his bishop. So once he takes, I'm going to take his bishop, and my knight on e1 will still be untouchable. Because if his rook takes my knight, I'm going to take back his rook, and I'm still going to be winning. So he took, let's take the bishop. Now we're ahead by 12 entire points. Well, the opponent resigns. Now we're going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 800 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now in the 800 region. We're still going to be playing some PIRC defense. He plays d4. Now let's go knight f6, hit the pawn. He guards the pawn. Now we play g6. This is the typical setup that we're aiming for. After bishop to g5, we're just going to play bishop to g7 here and just get the king out the center of the board. Knight f3, our king is castled. The first setup is out the way. Now we just need to figure out what to do with our knight and bishop here. Now, this is a very early e5. It's not a bad move though, but usually we're not afraid of e5. For example, after this move, I could simply just move my knight back to d7, and it's his pawn that is now under attack. If he takes on d6, I'm just going to take back on d6 with the c pawn. And then my whole plan is going to be to target the dark squares. Okay, he decides to play knight to d5. That's an interesting move. He is attacking my pawn on e7, but let's just develop our knight, guard the pawn. Like he's basically helping us. Like these quick attacks that you're seeing, none of these works. Now he plays bishop to b5. Another interesting move. What he's trying to do is he's trying to eliminate my knight, which is the main defender of my e7 pawn. But let's just play rook to e8 here. So that way, if he takes the knight, my e7 pawn is going to be guarded. And if he takes on d6, I'm just going to play take. Now, I could actually take with the e pawn, checking his king, but then after he moves the king, it's going to be hard to get my queen out of here. So let's just take with the c pawn. I'm thinking of playing queen to a5, check the king, hit the bishop. There will be some possibilities of knight c3. Okay, he decided to give up his bishop for a knight was a bit too soon to do that, to be honest. Let's just take. If he has to pull his knight back to c3, then he did all of those moves for no reason. And obviously, taking on e7 here is bad. The other thing is, because his king is still in the center of the board, I'm going to play a move that keeps his king in the center of the board. Maybe I'm even going to force his king to castle on the queen side. But if he castle on the queen side, he's going to be stepping on these open files. So he pulls the knight back to c3. As I said before, now I'm just going to play bishop to a6. My development is almost complete. My bishop prevents his king from getting castled. I'm now thinking of moves like queen to b6, connecting my rooks, and then the attack will come his way. Now, he does not care. Like, I could see that this player is just an extremely aggressive person. He plays d5. If I takes, uh, I'm not even seeing what this really does. I may still play queen b6. He takes hit the knight. I take hits the knight. He takes my knight. I check. He blocks with the knight. Then I move the rook. That's an idea. Or I could take first. Let's just take first. If he takes with the knight, he could be possibly losing a pawn. If he takes with the queen, now I could play queen to b6 without too much hassle. So he took with the queen. Let's go queen to b6. My rooks are now connected. All my minor pieces are developed. All his minor pieces are developed, except his king is in the center of the board. He's not able to castle on the king side. And if he castle on the queen side, then I will have this massive attack on his king. So he's definitely in some trouble here. Ooh, he pulls the bishop all the way back to c1. Now we have him undeveloping his pieces. That's what we want to see. Now, to I'm basically continuing my attack, but I'm also just being principled. For example, rook to c8. I'm just putting my rook on an open file, but I'm actually threatening to sacrifice my rook. And then if he takes, my bishop takes with check, check the king, pick up his rook. I have two pieces attacking c3. He only has one piece guarding c3. So he needs to apply some more defense, which is why he pulls the queen back. Now, the good thing about my position is his king is just stuck in the center of the board. I'm now trying to find some targets to attack, like e5 followed by e4. Just start pushing my pawns up the board. If e5, I don't want him to be able to play knight to e2 and castle. So if e5, knight e2, e4, if he puts a knight here, okay, let's go for it. Let's play e5. Temporarily, I'm blocking out my bishop, but the plan is to play e4. Like, I'm actually just trying to get rid of this pawn, actually. Like, if you think about it, if this pawn was not here, then it would have been an open file. So he plays knight to g5. It doesn't really do much. I want to play d. Yeah, let's just push the pawn. Let's just push the pawn. Again, if he takes the pawn, I got rid of the pawn, and that's what my plan is. Now he plays knight to d5. That's a good move. There is no huge threat except the fact that my queen is about to die, but that's the only threat that is in the position. Where do I put the queen is the question. Queen to c5, I'm thinking of. It doesn't attack the knight because his knight is guarded, but c5 seems like a very active square for a queen. Let's go queen c5. Now I have two pieces attacking his pawn on c2, but I'm just going to be honest. Like, even if he allows me to take on c2, I may not take on c2 because this light squared bishop is like the main piece that is just preventing his king from castling. And a lot of stuff that you're going to be learning here is not just the PIRC defense. Like these ideas where you have a piece preventing the opponent's king from castling, these are some ideas that you want to be using. And then he just decides to pull the knight back to c3. And already I have a very nice tactic, beautiful tactic, as a matter of fact. First of all, I'm attacking the knight 3 times. He's only guarding it twice. So if I really needed a pawn, I could just take the knight. But look on this. His queen on d2 is the only defender of the knight on g5. I'm not sure if this is not removing the guard. It's kind of like removing the guard in theory, but it's more like what's it called again? Interception, where I'm gonna hit him with pawn to e3. My pawn attacks the queen, which means the diagonal is no longer open. And once he takes, my queen swoops over and take his knight. And just like that, we're ahead by a knight. His king is still stuck in the center of the board. And believe it or not, this bishop did not start on c1. It started on c1, but it went to g5 and it went back to c1. Every single piece of mine is doing something. Now he took on d6, and my fellow viewers, I think I'm about to cook something. First of all, we're looking for forcing moves on the opponent's half of the board, like checks. Let's say I check on e2. He takes with the bishop, I check again. He moves the king to d1. That's not a mate because of the knight. But then, what if I check on e3? Okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? Or what if I sack my rook? Okay, let's say check takes check, king here, then I take the knight. That's what we're gonna be doing. So let's check on e3. That's a check. I mean, king f2 is something I didn't even calculate king f2 to be honest. Like, if he's not gonna accept the sack, then I'm assuming that I'm just winning. He decided to block with the knight. So this is gonna be over even quicker because my bishop covers the e2 square. I'm hitting the knight twice. He's only guarding it once. Maybe he thinks my rook is pinned, but that's a check, sir. So you have to react to that. Now he's gonna move the king. I think he's gonna put the king on d1. And once he puts his king on d1, where is my checkmate? So king to d1 was played. My bishop is hanging. My knight is hanging. My queen is under attack. I need to find a checkmate here. So if I take the unprotected rook, he's going to take. And then if I take his rook, he's going to take here. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. The best thing to do here is actually to play queen to g4. Queen to g4 puts the queen on the same line as the king. Like once the queen is on the same line as the king, I was about to say my bishop is untouchable, but he just touched my bishop. What I'm about to do, my fellow viewers, is called a discovered attack. All I want to do is move my rook out the way. This is actually a checkmate, by the way, but I'm just going to show you guys that I'm able to win his queen as well. So I'm going to pull my rook back to e6. My queen checks the king. My rook attacks his queen. He now has to get out of the check by playing king to e2. Maybe he blocks with the queen. That's also losing. But we don't want the queen because once he moves his king to d2, I was about to say that's just a checkmate. That would have been out so embarrassing. So what do we do here? Do we play bishop h6? Okay, bishop h6, king to d3, knight to c5, checkmate. It's a checkmate in two. Bishop to h6 check. Still don't want the queen. King has to go to c5. Oh, it's not even a checkmate because the king is able to go here. I guess we're gonna take his queen. Or what if I check here? If I check here, his king is oh, that's the mate. That's just a checkmate. We're gonna be doing the same thing against someone at the 900 level. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 900 region. We're going to be playing more PIRC defense. Knight f3, we go knight to f6, hitting the pawn. Knight c3. Now we just play g6. We're just trying to complete our setup here. He's developing his pieces very normally. Let's go bishop to g7. He castle his king. We're going to castle our king. And then he plays pawn to d4. Now, I've been saying this for a while, but this is the first thematic idea in the PERT defense. Once the bishop is on c4 and you're able to play knight takes e4, sacrificing your knight on e4, because once their knight takes on e4, you're going to play pawn to d5, forking back the two pieces. And this doesn't mean you have the biggest advantage and you're winning the game. It basically means you manage to equalize the position and you now have the bishop here. So bishop takes e4 was played. Once this happens, the bishop is active on this diagonal. So we need to play pawn to c6 to ensure that his bishop is not active. And after a move like pawn c3, from here, The focus is just development at this point. Now, one move I can play here is bishop to g4, but he's just going to chase away my bishop. And usually in the Perk defense, you want to get rid of your light squared bishop. But because I have the bishop here in this line, I'm actually going to play knight to d7. One thing I want you guys to keep in mind is if you do not, or if you're not able to find a square for your bishop, just develop the knight in front of it. Eventually, you'll be able to find a square. Now he plays h3. I'm going to play queen to c7 just to eventually connect my rooks once I finally develop my light squared bishop. Bishop to e3 was played, and now I'll play pawn to e5. This e5 break or even c5, you will be playing a lot in the Perk defense, especially e5. Now, he plays queen to d2. He wants to put his bishop on h6. Whenever you see them create this battery, trying to get their bishop to h6, you want to play moves like rook to e8. It puts the rook on the file now, but if he tries to pull his bishop to h6, I'm just going to play bishop to h8 and I'm fine. He decided to pull his bishop back. I want to take this pawn so that way my rook gets the open file. He decided to take with the bishop. And if he wants to trade this way, then I'm just going to take back. I just need to ensure that I find good development for my knight. So let's actually play knight to b6 here. If he trades, I'm just going to take. If he checks, I'm just going to move. And now I'm just going to develop my light squared bishop. So I do not have any huge advantage here. He puts his rook on the file. Let's just develop our bishop. The next plan is to swing the other rook in the game. And then that way, all our pieces are going to be active, which means it will be the right time to start the attack. Knight g4, that's a good move. Let's simply swing the rook in the game, attacking the queen. And I'm assuming he wants to play moves like queen to h4. He decided to play queen to f6 though, but I think queen to h4 would have been a better move. He now has two pieces on my half of the board, by the way. I have to be a bit careful. Whenever you see the opponent has pieces on your half of the board, you have to neutralize them, which is why I'm going to play the move knight to d5 in this position, immediately attacking the queen, forcing the queen out of my half of the board. He played the move knight takes e6. That's actually a very nice in between move because if I take his queen, he's going to take my queen. But now I'm just going to take with my rook. His queen is still under attack, so he still has to move the queen. And then once he moves the queen, I'll probably double up my rook. So he moves the queen. Let's double up the rooks. Where this game is probably going to be in an end game. The pawn structure is quite symmetrical, but the plan from here is to play moves like knight to f4. Knight to f4, knight to e2 is something. If I could get my rook to e2, that would already be good. He plays queen to g3, and I can already take his queen, play rook e2, and that's already an advantage in the endgame. I can also play queen to b6 though, because it attacks the unprotected pawn. Rook to e2 will still be happening with queens on the board. So bishop to b3 was played. Let's go rook to e2, threatening f2. Well, I'm not necessarily threatening f2, seeing that his queen is guarding, but I'm applying pressure to f2. b2 is what I'm really threatening. If I could find a way to apply more pressure to f2, then that would be great. He plays rook to b1, guarding his rook. Now I'm going to play. Okay, what do I play here? It's very important that I keep my pieces coordinated. So let's play queen c5. I want to play moves like queen e7. I don't want to move away. Like one thing you guys want to keep in mind is you don't want to have too much unprotected pieces around. Now, that was just a meaningless check, actually, because his queen has to go back to guard f2. So let's just play king to g7. Now he has to go back, and he literally just wasted a move because now my queen is on c5. All I'm going to do now is just make another move because his position didn't really change. I want to apply more pressure to this pawn on f2. So I'm going to play knight back to f6. My rook is the only unprotected piece. That's the only piece that I need to be worried about. He plays king to f1. Not not good, actually. That's not good. I think this is where he's losing because knight to e4 just wins the game. I mean, once I play knight e4, if he takes my rook, I take his queen. He has no checks on my king. And if he moves his queen, I will be able to play rook takes f2. If he moves his queen too far, then queen takes f2 is going to be a checkmate. He's attacking my rook. This is like the theme of offense is the best defense. My first reaction is not, okay, my rook is under attack. Let's move the rook. No, we look for more valuable piece that we can attack. This is also called danger levels. I'm also threatening a fork on d2, but I don't really have a lot of intentions of winning that rook. I'm actually going for mate here, and mate will be coming soon. Okay, he plays queen to d3, but that's just a checkmate. We're going to be playing more of these openings against someone at the 1000 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now in the 1000 region. He started off by playing e4. And because he starts with e4, we're going to play d6. This is the PIRC defense. And again, if they start with d4, it's the King's Indian defense. Now that he plays d4, let's go knight to f6, attacking the pawn on e4. Knight c3 guards the pawn, and now we're going to play pawn to g6. The whole idea here is just to put the bishop on g7, castle the king, and we're doing fine. Now, immediate bishop to g5 is definitely an interesting way to play, but there's nothing too threatening that is happening right now. So let's just continue with our plan. There is also knight to d7. So if you're scared of this e5 move, you could have actually played knight to e7. Now, one thing I want to tell you guys is him moving the bishop more than once in the opening stage of the game is bad. Him giving up his bishop for a knight this early on in the game is bad. So don't be like Tony. What I actually want you guys to take with the pawn and not the bishop. And the reason why I want you guys to take with the pawn and not the bishop is because once we castle the king and play rook to e8, we're going to get an open file. And once we play f5, the bishop is going to get back the open diagonal. So he plays h4. Let's castle the king. We're also not afraid of any kingside attack because he does not have a dark squared bishop. And if he doesn't have a dark squared bishop, we actually do not care if he opens the file because there's just not going to be any attack. So what are we going to do? We're going to play f5. The whole idea of f5 is to open the diagonal for our bishop, open the e file for our rook. Our knight could now go to c6 and attack this pawn on d4, and black has no issue here. So queen to d6 was played. He's asking for trouble for sure, for sure. I think he wants the castle on the queen side. Like my job here is to try to keep his king in the center of the board as best as I can. So let's take on e4 here. He definitely has to take with the knight, but now I'm thinking, do I go bishop to f5? Definitely. Has to be bishop to f5. It pins the knight. The knight is pinned. Keep that in mind. I'm also actively threatening to play d6, which will apply pressure to his pinned knight. And I'm going to be ahead by a piece already on move 10. Guy decided to castle his king. And again, piece is pinned, PP on the PP. And just like that, we're winning the game. So he took on g6. We're not in any rush, by the way. And again, it's fine to take with the f pawn if you're scared, but just take with the h pawn. Like this file pointing towards our king is nothing if his queen is not able to access the file, and it's also nothing if he's not able to get rid of our dark squared bishop. So once we have the dark squared bishop, even if a queen goes to h7, we just need to move the rook, and our king is going to be able to escape to f8. So this is just GG's. So he moves his rook. Not sure if it's guarding the knight, but here's what he wants. He wants me to take so that way his queen gets to h3 and he threatens a checkmate. I'm not going to do that. And I can also just play knight to c6 here, by the way, because the knight is pinned. We're not in any rush to take the knight. But I'm actually going to take the knight because it attacks the queen. Now I have two pieces attacking his pawn on d4. So I could also win his d4 pawn. And I think he could also be getting checkmated if I'm not lying. Like knight c6 followed by knight takes is good. So he decided to move the queen. Looks like he really wants to play queen to h4. But remember what we said, guys. We're not panicking. We're not trying to prevent queen to h4. We're going to take with the queen, certain b2, and then even after he plays c3 to guard b2, we're just going to move the queen, attack the pawn, because if he puts his queen on h4, we just need to move this rook somewhere. And once we move the rook somewhere, all he's going to get is a check. So here's how it looks. Queen to a4. We're threatening the unprotected pawn. We're also trying to get our queen on this c2 square, assuming that this pawn is not there. So obviously, we're going to try to move the pawn out the way to threaten the checkmate on c2. He moves his queen to h4. We spoke about this. That's just an empty check that he's going for. Let's just play rook to e8. If he checks, the king moves to f8. He has no more checks. His queen is also going to be out of place. I think he has to keep his queen here so that way I'm not able to push. So he develops his knight instead. It's funny because I'm not able to push because his queen is going to take my queen. With that being said, I'm going to take on a2. Now I want to push so that way my queen gets the b1 square, and that's going to be leading to checkmate in two moves. Let's see how he responds. Okay, so he moves his knight to d4. He moves his knight to d4. That could be a problem because I need this bishop, man. I need the bishop. So if I push, he's going to take. And then if I check, he's going to move the king. And then I take the rook. And then he takes my bishop. And then if I check, he moves the king and I have nothing. Okay, that's not a bad move, sir. That's not a bad move. All right, knight d4 was a really nice move. I think we have to pull our bishop back to d7 because I'm trying to get access to his light squares around the king. And if he takes my bishop, I'm going to be in trouble. So I want to get my bishop around via this route. The good thing is, this check still does not lead to anything. He could take on e4, but then I'm just going to develop my knight. It will help me to connect my rooks, and he will not have anything dangerous on my king. And that's another thing when you play this line. Your king is very, very safe. Like whenever you have a fianchetted bishop, it's like the safest king to have. So he took with the rook. Obviously, we're not going to take because that just helps his queen. So instead, we're going to be developing our knight. So that way, if his rook takes, it helps our rook to get the file. No, I'm trying to take his knight so that way my bishop could finally get to the f5 square. So that way I'm able to deliver my checkmate. So he took with the knight, and as much as I really want to take with the bishop. It just seems like the correct principled thing to do. But I kind of want to take with the pawn so that way I'm able to get my idea, you know? So let's take with the pawn. It also opens up the B file. I don't think I'm going to need the B file to be honest, but I do get the B file. So now the plan is simple. Get the bishop to f5, get the queen to b1, and that's going to lead to a mate. So he plays bishop to d3, also a very nice move, because if I check on a1, his bishop is able to block, and if I go here, he takes, bishop takes. Aha, aha. That's why taking with the b pawn was good, because now I'm able to play rook to b8, putting my rook on the b file. I know I'm threatening to take on b2. Now, one thing you could try to defend is to play rook takes e8, but I'm not going to take with the rook. I'm just going to take with the bishop, so that way I'm still attacking his b2 pawn. Now, this dark squared bishop is going to be, it's always going to be the main character of your position. So if you're going to be playing the PIRC defense, the King's Indian attack, or the King's Indian defense, your dark squared bishop is going to be the main character. Because if you look on the position after king to f8, the only reason why I'm not outright checkmated is because of this dark squared bishop. Once I take here, now I'm the one who's threatening b2. He now has to be careful not to get checkmated. I'm not gonna lie though, he's defending very well. Like I really thought I was gonna checkmate his king already. So he pulls the queen all the way back. Looks like he's trying to attack my unprotected pawn, but he's not going to be in time to do anything. He's going to be getting mated. I'm attacking b2 twice. He's only guarding it with his king. Let's take on b2 with check. The king now has to go to d1, and now I'm trying to find my checkmate. Not seeing my checkmate. I'm thinking of just taking on c3 with the bishop, because then queen to d2 is going to be a checkmate. If I take with the bishop, though, the only thing that I'm scared of is queen to h6 check. But if queen to h6 check, I mean, I could block with the bishop, but I want to mate. I want to mate. That's the thing. Obviously, the move is rook to d8. What am I doing? Just apply some pressure to the bishop. Like the bishop is pinned. The thing is, though, he is able to guard the bishop. For example, queen to h3. If he puts his queen on g3, then once I take, he's not able to check on h6. But if he puts his queen on h3, he guards okay. He puts his queen on g3. That's not the correct score for the queen. Because now, only now, I'm going to take on c3. And I'm now threatening a checkmate on d2, and there's no more queen h6 check. What he could do is play queen to e3 to guard the mate. What do I play after he plays that move? Okay, he plays f5, did not see the mate, which means that's just a checkmate. We're going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 1100 level. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 1100 region. We're playing more pure defense. Let's go pawn to d6, d4, knight f6, hit the pawn. He guards the pawn, and then we just need to fianchetto our bishop and get our king to safety. Bishop to c4. We see what's coming. We're going to sack the knight and play d5, but I don't recommend that you guys do this with your king in the center of the board. So let's get the king castled first. He develop his knight. I'm going to castle. And then if he castles, we're gonna sack the knight because we've been yeah, he didn't castle, but he plays bishop to g5, so it's the same idea. As I said, this is one of the main thematic ideas in the perk. Persons don't know this. Sacrifice your knight on e4, and then once the knight takes, pawn to d5, for king back the knight and the bishop, and just like that, with the black pieces, we manage to equalize the position. And I've seen persons sacrificing their bishop on f7. It doesn't really help the position a whole lot though, because now my rook has that's a nice file. I can always play moves like bishop g4, apply some pressure to the knight. I think I'm doing fine here. Now, first I'm gonna play knight to c6 because now I'm applying some pressure to this pawn on d4. If he castles his king, then I'll pin. Let's see. So he plays queen to d2. I'm already thinking of sacking my rook, taking on d4, threatening a fork here. But I'm just going to play the calm bishop to g4, applying some pressure to the knight, which is the main defender of his d4 pawn. Now, all our minor pieces are out, plus my rook gets the open file. I can play moves like queen f8 to apply more pressure, or I could play queen d7 followed by rook f8, so every single piece is in the game. So he plays pawn to c3 to guard his pawn here, but I have a move. I have a nice move. The obvious move is to take the knight, take with the rook. But what if I take with the rook? Because I'm noticing both of his rook and his knight is sitting on this light square. So if I take with the rook and then he takes, I take, that's a fork. Yeah, let's sack the rook. He has to find knight g3 after. And it's actually not a counterintuitive move. Like if he takes and I takes, person's first instinct is usually to move the rook. But it's actually best to lose the rook than to lose an entire knight. So he took, let's take. Now I'm hitting the rook and the knight. Again, knight g3 is the best decision here. Just give him back the rook. I take. Let me only be ahead by a pawn. If you move the rook and I take the knight, then I'm going to have two minor pieces for the rook, and it's going to be a better position for me to play. So he decided to move his rook out the way, and he just left his knight hanging. So let's just take the knight here. Now I'm ahead by 2 points, and I have two minor pieces for the rook. That being said, I am gonna start some attack on his king, thinking of moves like knight here, check him here. Like I have so many ideas. I'm just trying to figure out which one to implement. But let's go queen to f8 here, actually. Queen to f8, the queen is on an open file, but I want to play queen to f7 to attack this unprotected pawn. My bishop is unprotected. That's something that I need to be aware of. He immediately attacks the bishop. Let's just pull the bishop back. I want to keep my bishop on this diagonal. That's a very nice diagonal for the bishop. It keeps his king very limited, especially since he does not have a light squared bishop. Now he plays pawn to d5. Decent move. He's attacking my knight. He's forcing my knight to move. Not see what prevents my knight from moving towards the center. Let's just move towards the center. f4 here would be a nice move. I think he wants to win my pawn on e7. If that's his idea, then he is a decent player. I think he needs to play f4 here, which he did. Now, I'm thinking of checking on d3, but then if I check, he plays rook takes, and I'm giving him back the two pieces. I prefer to play knight c4 here, allowing him to win the pawn, than to give him back the two pieces. Because no, look on the activity of my pieces. Just look on how my pieces are pointing towards his king. So he plays queen takes. Let's actually trade the queens off the board because once his bishop takes, I swing my rook in the game. Now every single piece is doing something, and he's about to get checkmated. Trust me, like something is coming up, like something is about to hit him because he has to move the bishop unless he goes here. Yeah, I think he's able to go here, which he didn't. Now we play rook to e2. Remember, rook's on the 7 is in heaven. Rook to c2 is some that's a big boy threat. But let's see how he responds to it, especially since my dark squared bishop is pointing towards his king. A lot of stuff is about to happen. Watch and learn what's about to happen. So he plays rook to e1. Not bad. Not bad. Because his king is getting a running score. The good thing, well, I'm not gonna trade, obviously. Oh, it's actually bad. Because if I check and the king goes here, that's mate. If I check, the king goes here, I check here, and that's going to lead to mate. Let's check on c2. King b1, that's mate. He has to go to b1 on the same line as my bishop, which is counterintuitive. He puts his king on d1, and that's a checkmate. We're going to be playing more peer defense against 1200 level players. Please stick around and like the video. Our opponent is now 1200. We're going to be playing more peer defense. Let's go d6. D4, we go knight f6, hit the pawn, same ideas. Knight c3 guards the pawn. Now we play g6 to fianchetto to the bishop. We're doing this every game, so it's not a matter of memory now. It's like we just know what to do. F4 was played. This is interesting. He wants to play a very quick e5, also something that we don't need to be worried about. So let's just continue with our setup. If he plays early e5, let's just castle here first. But if he plays early e5, we should be able to just move the knight. This is called the Austrian attack, and he plays bishop to c4, something that we have been talking about. This is one of the main idea in the PIRC. So if you're going to try out this line, you have to know what I'm about to do. The bishop is on c4 and the pawn is being guarded by the knight. I'm able to sack my knight. Once his knight takes, I play pawn to d5, forking it back. Let's sack the knight. Once the knight takes, we play d5. Now, the better thing to do is to keep the bishop. But yeah, a lot of persons try to keep the knight. Let's just take the knight. And then once he takes with the bishop, it's just development from here. He took with the bishop. I want to play knight c6 to hit the pawn, but after pawn c3, I'm not seeing what my knight is doing. So I'm actually going to play pawn c5 here to attack his center. Now, if he takes on c5, it's actually not a free pawn. There is queen a5 taking back the pawn. Now that he plays c3, I'll take the pawn. And if he takes back with the pawn, then knight c6 makes a lot of sense because his pawn on d4 will be called an isolated pawn. So he took, let's go knight c6. Now I have 3 pieces attacking d4. He has 2 pieces guarding d4. So he has to add some additional defense to d4. He pushed the pawn to d5. The guy did not want to defend. He says offense is the best defense. That's not a bad move. That's really not a bad move. Now, I think I have to do a little maneuver here. It starts with knight to b5. He needed to play a3 there and chase away my knight, but he didn't. But I think he's still doing fine. a3 is going to be played either way. My plan was to get my knight to c5 and attack his bishop. So well, if knight here, there's bishop here. I could check, but he's just going to move. I think I'm winning a pawn in this position, if I'm not wrong, because I'm attacking this pawn twice, right? He's guarding it twice. There's a way to remove the guard, basically, with pawn to f5, attacking his bishop. Now, once he moves the bishop, he's only going to have the queen guarding the d pawn. And then I'm just going to take the free pawn. So we're already ahead by a pawn after 12 moves. A3 counter attacking the knight doesn't work because I'm just going to take the bishop. And if he takes my knight, I take another piece. I think the best he could do is just pull the bishop all the way back to b1, so that way his bishop could come on this diagonal. Bishop c2 is also something. After takes bishop b3, but there's always e6 or even bishop e6. I'm fine. So he plays a3. That's the move we spoke about, but that's actually losing an entire piece. Again, he's aggressive. He's trying to be offense is the best defense. But when I take his bishop, I'm attacking his knight. So I take his bishop. If he takes my knight, I'll take his knight. He did not see that far ahead, which is why he didn't take the knight and he decided to move his knight all the way. Now, I'm going to play the move queen to b6 check, forcing his king to move. And then once his king move out the way, I'm going to play knight to d3. And once I play knight to d3, actually, I thought I was cooking, but knight d3 doesn't work. Probably should have just took the pawn. Knight c3 doesn't work. But it's fine. Let's just play knight d3. I wanted to play knight f2 and win the rook, but once he plays knight takes e4, he's covering the f2 square. Like knight takes e4, bishop f5, queen takes, that doesn't work. So once he takes here, I may have to just take his bishop. I mean, I'm ahead by a piece. I'm chill. So he didn't take, he decided to move the queen to guard the f2 square. And that gives me time to play bishop f5 and guard my e4 pawn. So now I'm ahead by a clean piece. He didn't get back the pawn. Probably just need to swing my rooks in the game. And like once I swing my rooks in the game, I'm chill. I'm thinking of e3. Doesn't work though, because he is covering the square twice. Rook to a2. Why though? I think he wants to play b4. Okay, doesn't see why. Let's continue by bringing more pieces in the attack. Let's go rook to d8. I'm trying to take the pawn. I'm trying to put my rook on the same line as his queen. I'm trying to swing my a rook on the c file, and then every single piece is going to be playing a rook. So he did play b4. That's just a free pawn move. So let's just take the pawn, after which I'll be able to get my rook on the file. Not sure why he played b4. Yeah, I was about to say bishop b2 is not even available. Ah, I guess it is though. Because if I take on b2, he takes my rook. Mm. Well, what if I play e3? Let's play e3 first. Let's play e3 because the bishop no longer covers this square. So let's play e3 and attack his queen. I'm still attacking the bishop twice. Maybe he's able to pull the queen back to d1. But if he pulls the queen back to d1, I have knight f2, my fellow viewers. So e3, and then I'm going to take on b2 next because I have two attackers. He has two defenders, but the defenders that he has are just so valuable. He moves the queen to e2. That's a check. He moves the king, hit him with a skewer, move the queen, grab the rook. I think this has smothered potential. I think it has smothered potential. Check, takes. Yeah, I think knight takes is better, but knight f2 has smothered me potential. So let's go for that. If he sacked the rook, I'm just gonna take, and then I'm gonna try to queen the pawn. He moves the king. That's what I was expecting. Now I go bishop to d3 because the queen and the rook is on the same light square. This is called a skewer, where we force the more valuable piece out the way. Now, oh Lord, I think it's just lost actually because I'm just gonna push my pawn to e2 next, and if he takes my knight, I'm gonna queen. Yeah, this is just lost now. Okay, he moves the queen. He moves the queen. E2 hits the rook, then he takes, and I'm not able to queen because his queen is on d1. Okay, that's fine. Let's just take. Let's just take the rook. Let's just take the rook. I'm now ahead by 9 points. By the way, this is GG's. So he took on g7 instead. Interesting decision. Very interesting decision. What if I don't take the bishop and I push the pawn instead? If he takes my knight, I'm going to queen my pawn. The queen will not be able to take due to this pin. And if the queen takes my queen, I just move my bishop and that's mate. So let's push the pawn. Now, he could also just sack the rook. Well, if he sacks the rook, it's a rook. I'm winning. I think I missed rook to d1. I think rook to d1. Yeah, rook to d1 would have been nice, but I'm still threatening to play rook to d1. Like everything is just winning here. Material advantage. I have the attack. It's GG's. And my opponent resigns. We're going to be playing more pair defense against players at the 1300 level. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 1300 level. We're still playing more PIRC defense. He plays knight to f3. Let's go knight f6. We're going to be going with our normal regular setup. Knight c3. We play g6, d4, bishop to g7, bishop to g5. Like all of what he's doing, we're just going to be doing what we usually do. Now, after queen d2, he wants to play bishop to h6 and then trade the bishops off the board. So I'm going to play rook to e8 so that way I'm able to meet bishop h6 with bishop h8. Now, whenever you see this h4 move, it's an indication that they want to play moves like h5, but I'm actually just going to play bishop g4 here. It threatens to just get rid of the knight, which we're not going to take so easily, but it prevents him from playing h5. You know, like this is how you also defend against these quick, aggressive attacks. Now, bishop e2 was played, and the move that I like to continue with in this position is pawn to c6. The idea with pawn to c6 is we're now able to play moves like pawn to b5, pawn to b4, chase away this knight, win the pawn on e4. That's my plan. Now, we also need to ensure that we finish our development. So knight to d7 followed by e5 is also one way to play. So he pulls the knight back to h2. Yeah, he's just trying to get his attack to work. But let's take on e2. Now, remember, if you're a PIRC defense player and you manage to get rid of your light squared bishop, then that's a good sign. And he just captured with his knight main piece that was guarding e4, by the way. This is what happens when you try to attack too quickly. You know, you try to win too quickly. Knight takes e4. That's just a pawn. I'm now hitting the queen and the bishop at the same time. He's forced to move the queen. And now I'm not sure if I'm going to take this bishop. Maybe I will. He moves the queen. Yeah, maybe I just need to take the bishop. I I'm positive that he's going to take with the pawn, though. That's the thing. And then it opens up the rook. But then I play queen to b6, and I just need to ensure that my attack is faster than his. Yeah, let's do that. Let's take. If he takes with the pawn, I go here. He did take with the pawn. Queen to b6 attacks his b2 pawn, and pawn to e5. Probably should have played pawn to e5, to be honest, but pawn e5 is a very nice move. He castles his king. Now pawn e5 is even prettier because his b2 pawn is under some attack. And then he plays knight to f3. The thing is, my rook is pinned, so I'm not able to take just yet. So I have to be principled and complete my development first. So let's play knight a6. Yes, I'm putting my knight on the edge of the board, but if I had played knight d7, he would be able to take. So now he plays queen to e4. Queen to e4, that's definitely a mistake, bro. Because now my rook is not unprotected anymore. And once I take here, he's not able to play queen takes due to my bishop. So once I take, he actually just have to move the queen. And my rook is attacking the knight. He moves his queen over to h4, which is it looks scary. We know it. It looks scary. But here's something that I want you guys to keep in mind. If you have a dark squared bishop and the opponent does not have a dark squared bishop, the queen takes h7 does nothing. That's a free knight. Let's just take the free knight. Yes, he's able to play queen takes h7. I'm just going to move my king. There is no attack. There is no checkmate. His queen will actually just be misplaced. And then my bishop and my queen, which points towards his b2 pawn, I'll play d3. So yeah, he actually didn't go for all of that. So he plays rook to e1 instead. Again, I want to take on b2, but my pawn is in the way. So I have to do a discovered attack. I have to move my pawn to d3. Well, he decided to play c3, which, well, queen takes b2 was mate, so he resigns. We're going to be playing more PIRC defense against 1400 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now in the 1400 region. We're still going to be playing the PIRC defense against e4. And now he plays d4. We're going to play the move knight to f6, applying some pressure to his e4 pawn. And then he plays knight c3. So it's the same setup. We're going to play g6, bishop g7, castle. As we said, this setup can be played against anything that white plays. He develops his knight. Let's just go bishop to g7 here. Same idea. We're going to castle the king. Now he plays bishop to e3. Now, one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, whenever you notice a bishop is here, you can always consider the move knight g4 because, it's going to be good to capture the opponent's bishop. But it's too early to play this move. So we're just going to castle our king. Because if we play knight g4, he could actually move his bishop, then chase our knight out of his half of the board. Now, keep in mind that bishop to c4 here would be a mistake, which he just did. And this is like one of the main thematic ideas in the perk defense. So if you're going to be playing the perk defense, this move is something that you should always be on the lookout for. And remember what I tell you guys, it works best when your king is castled. So if your king is in the center, I wouldn't recommend playing knight takes e4. And we're not necessarily going to be gaining any material from this. We basically gain very quick equality. So, for example, once he takes, we're going to play pawn to d5, forking back the pieces. Usually, what persons do is they pull the bishop back. Taking on d5 isn't the best way to do it because now he's giving up his bishop, and I already have the two bishops. So he pulls his knight back to attack my queen. Here I just have to move my queen to safety. I'm thinking of playing queen to d6 or just pull my queen all the way back to d8, to be honest. But there is queen to a5. Now it looks like a Scandinavian defense because I can always play pawn to c6 and pull my queen back to c7. Now, what we're trying to do from this position is to target the opponent's weak d4. Well, it's not necessarily a weak pawn because it can be guarded by a pawn, but because it's not guarded by a pawn, we're going to be targeting this pawn. We're going to try to ensure that we finish our development as quickly as possible, though. So you may see me playing moves like bishop g4, knight c6, rook d8. That would be like the ideal situation to win a pawn. But usually it's best to play some moves like pawn to c6. So it all depends on what the opponent does. So queen to d3 was what came on the board. It's not an accurate move. Maybe he's trying to castle on the queen side. Already I want to play bishop to f5 and that would gain a tempo on the queen. But then it looks like he's just going to play queen to b5. So I don't want to allow any queen to b5 ideas, but I want to play bishop to f5. I'm thinking of knight c6, but there is still queen b5. So let's play pawn to a6 here. The good thing about pawn to a6 is if he decides to castle on the queen side, I can immediately try to start a pawn storm on his king. And, this is going to be good. And whenever the opponent has their queen on a square like d5, well, d3, and you know that you're going to be attacking the queen, what we usually say is the queen is compromised. It's on a square that's obviously going to be attacked. I'm not sure if I want to rush this though. Here, he's probably going to pull the queen back to d2. I don't really gain much from it. So I'm thinking of playing knight to c6. Knight c6 is a more riskier approach because I'm allowing him to move his pawn forward, but pawn d5 should be able to be met with bishop f5 followed by knight to b4. And we're going to be applying a lot of pressure to his c2 pawn, his d5 pawn. The rooks will be able to join the game. He pulls his knight back to e2. That's definitely an indication that he wants to play c3 and covers d4 pawn. Knight b4, I'm thinking of. Not yet, though. It's definitely bishop f5. We're going to develop our bishop with a tempo on his queen. So all our minor pieces are successfully developed here. We are not ahead by any pieces. The only slight advantage you could say black have is the fact that I have the bishop here. I don't have anything else. He pulls the queen all the way back to d1. He wants to play pawn to c3 and support this pawn. I think I'm in good shape here. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by playing rook to d8. Because remember what I told you guys, once you develop all your minor pieces, you want to be developing your major pieces. And I'm now putting my rook on the same line as his queen. Because my rook is on the same line as his queen, it is safe to say that I can now hit him with a move like pawn to e5 because his d4 pawn is going to be pinned. Like I was expecting pawn to c3 and I was planning on playing pawn to e5. So now the plan is just to target d4. If I could manage to create an isolated pawn on d4, then that could be a slight win for me. And if I could get rid of one of these knights, which is the main defender of his d4 pawn, then that would also be a slight win for me as well. So, for example, if he plays knight to g3, attacking my bishop, I'm just going to play bishop to g4. Okay, now he plays knight to h5, which that's a very backwards move because I wanted to get rid of one of his main defender of the d4 square, but then he willingly played knight to h5. With that being said, I'm attacking the pawn one, two, three, four times. He's guarding the pawn one, two, three, four times. So I'm not going to be winning any material from this move. The good thing is knight is on the edge of the board. So I'm trying to formulate a plan that could keep his knight on the edge of the board. Oh, I definitely want to take on d4 though, because if I take on d4 and then he chooses to take on f5 first, I will take on e3 as an in-between move because his queen is going to be under attack. If he takes with the knight, I'll just take. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take on d4 so that way he gets an isolated pawn on d4. And once he has the isolated pawn, that's my target. So now I could say I have two slight advantages. And this is how you guys will be winning games as you climb up the rating ladder. It's not going to be, oh, he blundered a tactic. I'm just going to boom, 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 win the game. You're not necessarily going to always be seeing stuff like that at the 1400 level. So you have to add up your small wins. For example, I have the bishop here. He has an isolated pawn and he has a knight on the edge of the board. I'm not going to play the move bishop to g4, pinning this knight to the queen, which means I am threatening a removing the guard tactic to win a pawn. And yes, I know that he's able to play pawn to f3, and that's going to be a free tempo on my bishop. But the reason why I'm doing that is for one, once he plays f3, his bishop is now unprotected, and two, his knight is now stuck on the edge of the board. If you look on the position, because now I pull my okay, I want to pull my bishop back to e6, but I also want to play rook to e8 to attack the unprotected bishop. But let's pull back to e6. His knight is now trapped on the edge of the board, so I'm already thinking of pawn to g5, and that's going to be winning a knight. I'm also thinking of bishop to c4. Why bishop to c4? Because the knight is one of the main defenders of his d4 pawn. So if I'm able to go bishop c4, grab the knight, then win the pawn on d4, then that's more advantage for me. So again, stock up the small wins, and that's how you should be evaluating the position. He plays f4. He knows exactly what is coming. Um, hmm. No, okay. I was about to debate between bishop g4 and bishop c4, but it's obvious that bishop c4 is the move. And the reason why bishop c4 is the move is because once I play bishop c4, not only am I pinning the knight, I'm also threatening to take the knight, which will not only remove the knight being a defender, it would also remove the queen being a defender, which means if I play bishop to c4 and he still manages to pull his knight back to f3, trying to add some extra defender to his isolated d4 pawn, I take the knight, his queen takes, and then he's going to have two defenders versus my three attackers, and then I'm going to be winning a pawn. So I think I'm about to win a pawn. So what are our advantages right now? Isolated pawn, bishop pair, knight on the edge of the board, and extra pawn because we're about to win a pawn. Okay, the knight went back to f3. If I takes, queen takes, that's a free pawn. I'm calculating rook to e8 as well, because not only am I getting my worst placed piece in the game, it's kind of like a skewer, because if he moves the bishop, he loses the knight. And another thing I'm seeing is if I play rook e8, he is able to play knight to e5, but his d pawn is pinned. So if I takes and he takes with the f pawn, I could get away with bishop takes e5 because d pawn is pinned. So I'm going to win the F pawn, and eventually I am going to win the D pawn. So I may win two pawns from this. With that being said, what have we learned? Whenever you see a good move, always look for a better one. I want you guys to look on my position. And I want you guys to notice that I'm not really making a lot of pawn moves because I'm targeting the center of the board. I also want you guys to notice that every single piece that I have is playing an active role in the game here. So I do not like to do premature attacks. A lot of persons, as soon as they develop two of their pieces, they start their attack. That's not how chess works. It's going to be hard for you to win games if you're doing it like that. I mean, king to f2 also saves the bishop, but he's not going to play king to f2, right? That's a weird move. Like nobody should want their king to be one of the main defensive piece. Okay, he plays b3. He's basically saying, if you take my bishop, I'm going to take your bishop. And if you take my knight, I'm going to take back the knight and guard my bishop. So that's not a bad move. I wanted to win a piece in this position, but I don't think I'm winning a piece. If I takes, queen takes, however, knight takes d4 is just a free pawn. It's not only a free pawn because my bishop is on the same diagonal as his rook. So I'm attacking his queen. If he moves the queen, I will grab the knight with check, then I'll take the rook. But if he does not do that and decide to take, I'm going to take on d4, hit the rook, apply pressure to his pinned bishop, and then I'm winning. So I think we're winning some material after bishop takes e3 here. So he decides to take on d4. Here's the idea. His bishop on e3 is pinned, which means yes, I'm able to take on d4. If I am attacking the queen, by the way, if he moves the queen, I take, grab the rook. If he takes with the knight, I take, hit the rook, apply pressure to his pinned bishop, and we're winning material. So this is now completely winning here. So he did move the queen to f2, which means we are going to be winning some material here. It starts with knight takes f3 check. His queen has to take. This is a discovered attack, by the way, moving my knight out the way. Once his queen takes, oh my god, I'm not going to take the rook. I am not going to take the rook. That's crazy. Are you seeing the move? What am I going to play after queen takes? It's actually not bishop takes rook. It's not bishop takes rook. What are we learning from this? We're learning that whenever there's a good move, we want to look for a better one. After queen takes, here's what I'm seeing. First of all, how do we find the best move in chess? By looking for moves that we can play on the opponent's half of the board. So obviously bishop takes a1 is a good move because it takes material, but we don't have any checks in this position, which means all the moves that we're looking on are our captures. Look on this. His king is slightly exposed because of him moving the f4 pawn. His bishop and his king is on the same diagonal. If I sack the rook and his queen dares to take my rook, bishop takes d4 is going to win the queen. Such a nice move. With that being said, once I take, his queen is not able to take. And if his queen is not able to take, he has to move his queen away. Then I'm going to take the rook. And then once he takes back, I'm going to be ahead by an entire rook. Oh, he just didn't. Yeah, he just didn't see what's happening. Let's just go bishop d4. He just completely missed bishop d4. And now I'm just completely winning. I mean, he has to sack the queen. And from here, we're just going to checkmate him in the next few moves. By the way, if you guys like this video, please indicate by actually liking the video. He moves the rook to f1. If I takes, there's rook takes. Oh, it's over now. I want to play queen c3 to apply some pressure, but he's just going to take. So let's grab the queen. And then after the rook takes, I'm actually going to play queen to c5, pinning his rook. And I'm assuming he's going to try to guard his rook with rook to e1. Yeah, and then we're thinking of playing rook to e8 here, just applying some pressure to the pinned rook. Yeah, let's just do that. Rook to e8 or rook to d3, they both apply pressure to the pinned rook. This is complete. Well, my opponent resigns. We're not going to be doing the same thing with the same opening against someone at the 1500 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now in the 1500 region. He plays e4. We're going to be playing more PIRC defense. d4, we play knight to f6, develop the knight, hit the pawn. Knight c3 guards the pawn. Now we're going to play the move pawn to g6. We're just going to get our setup out the way. We're going to develop our bishop. We're going to castle our king. He plays bishop to c4. So keep in mind, we could sacrifice the knight and then play d5. But remember what we said? It's best to do this with our king out the center of the board. So let's play bishop to g7 here. The next move is to castle our king. He develops his knight. Now we castle our king. And keep in mind, in the Pyrrhic defense, a move like bishop to g4 would be good to get rid of this knight. But then he plays h3 to prevent it. But then it leads into the idea that we spoke about with this bishop on c4. We're going to sacrifice the knight on e4. Now, if he takes on f7, we're just going to take, we're fine. But then if he takes on e4, we play pawn to d5, forking back the knight. Again, doesn't mean that we're better or we're completely winning, but black gets complete equality coming out of the Pyrrhic defense. Now, it would have been better for him to pull the bishop back, then take on e4. Now that he takes on d5, black is actually doing very, very well here because I have the bishop here. Now, he moves his knight. My queen is under attack, so I have to find a good square for my queen in this position. I'm thinking queen a5. I'm thinking queen d6. Now, queen to d6 is an idea. What I don't like about queen to d6 is knight to b5, but then if knight b5, I'm able to check on b4. So let's play queen to d6 in this position. Queen a5 is also fine. My next move is to play pawn to c6 to prevent knight b5. And the reason why I chose to put my queen on d6 is so that way his dark squared bishop does not get the chance to go to f4. Now, I need to ensure that I complete my development here as well. He plays bishop to e3. Now, knight c6 I'm thinking of, but the knight doesn't belong on c6. Moves like knight to b4. Not now, but in the future may be a bit too annoying. So let's play pawn to c6, preventing any knight from going to b5. We need to finish our development. Now, we don't really have good squares to put our light squared bishop right now. If we put it on f5, we have to worry about moves like g4. We have to worry about move like knight h4. So he plays queen to e2. Looks like he's trying to castle on the queen side. That would be suicidal, by the way. It's very recommended that he castle on the king side because my bishop is pointing towards there. I'm going to play b5 and hit the knight. It's I would not do that if I were him. Now, I'm just going to continue with my development here. I kind of want to play knight a6 to c7 to d5, getting rid of this knight. I'm thinking of knight to d7. If knight e7, then I need to play e5 to get my knight in the game. After he takes, I take. So let's actually go knight to a6. And yes, I'm putting my knight on the edge of the board, but keep in mind, if we're putting our knight on the edge of the board, it means that the knight will not stay on the edge of the board. Now he plays the move pawn to a3, which was definitely not necessary. I wasn't planning on playing knight to b4, and no, he's definitely not going to castle on the queen side, because if he does castle on the queen side, I'm going to use his a3 pawn as a hook, and I'm going to play b5, b4. Remember, c6, b5 is thematic in the PIRC. Now, let's just go knight to I'm thinking bishop e6 actually, but if bishop e6, knight to g5 is too annoying. So let's go knight to c7 first. I could put my knight on d5. I'm still thinking of playing bishop to e6 because if knight g5, there's bishop to d5. And if he takes, then I could take with the pawn. And keep in mind that our light squared bishop is the bad bishop in the PIRC. So if you have to give up the light squared bishop, then it's fine. Now, he plays the move rook to d8, and I have a nice little idea. And that idea is pawn to b6. Now, if I play pawn to pawn b6 is a good move. I almost didn't play pawn to b6 because I kind of wanted to trick him, but it's not a trick. If he castle, he's going to be losing an exchange. But that's not the whole point. The whole point is if he does not castle and my bishop goes to a6, then his king will not be castling ever again. And what do we do when a king is in the center of the board? We open the center of the board. So the only move that you could say I'm kind of afraid of it is knight to e4 because then the queen attacks my knight. Now I have to move the queen. Okay, where do we put the queen? We're going to play bishop a6. I think he wants to play c4. So I'm thinking queen to d5, hit the knight. And then if he goes back to c3, then I pull my queen back to d. I like that idea. Let's go queen to d5. Because c4 is not possible because his knight is hanging. Now he could play knight to d2, and if bishop a6 pawn c4, that would mean something. If he finds that, then he knows something about chess. He didn't find it. He pulls the knight back to g3. Now we play bishop to a6, and I am confident that black is better in this position. The guy's king is not able to get castled. He has to move his queen to d2 here. The queen is going to be moving to d2. And then I'm going to play moves like rook to e8, rook to d8. Okay, so he did play queen to d2. I would love to get my knight to the d5 square. I think he wants to play bishop h6, which I should not be worried about, to be very honest. Should not be worried about that, but I want to keep my bishop. So let's go rook to e8. Let's put the rook on the same line as the king. And remember, whenever the opponent creates a battery like this and they want to play bishop h6, you meet bishop h6 with bishop h8, and then they're not going to have any attack. He plays pawn to b3, which is a very good move because now he wants to play pawn c4, and then his king is going to be able to get castled. Okay, is there any way to prevent this? Can I play e5? He's still going to play c4. Okay, I cannot prevent c4, but what I could do is I could put my queen on d6, and then I'm going to say, if you play c4, I'm going to take a free pawn on a3. So I'm indirectly preventing him from playing c4. I don't think I'll ever be able to directly prevent him from playing c4, though. Unless he plays b4, then c4 is just never going to be possible anymore. He could play a4, though. Um, I want to play e5, but okay, so he did play a4. I'm thinking knight to d5 here. And then if c4, knight to b4, and then c5, and then I'm going to resign. No, I'm not going to resign because I'm going to take, the knight is guarded. If he takes, my knight is under attack, but then I check the guy here, and I'm doing fine. So let's hit him with knight to d5. I'm also hitting the bishop, so I could just take the bishop if I'm missing something, but I'm not seeing what I'm missing. Pawn c4, knight b4. Yeah, but then he's just gonna castle. What's my knight even doing on b4? Why not just c4, take the bishop, and then I could say I have two bishops versus two knights. That's an advantage. Because he has to take with the queen, which would put his queen on the same line as my rook, but my queen is on the same line as his rook, so it's kind of weird. B4, well, c4 leaves the b3 pawn to be weak, so that's something. So he did play c4. Again, let's not try to be fancy. If knight b4, he's just going to castle the king. So let's take on e3. And here I could say I have two bishops versus two knights, that has to be an advantage. He took with the queen. The queen is on the same line as the rook. I'm thinking e5, knight takes e5. Well, if pawn takes e5, I check him here. If he blocks with the queen, I take here. If okay, e5 is nice. If knight takes e5, I take, pawn takes e5, I check, and then I'm just not winning the pawn anymore. Hmm. What if I just check first? What if I check? Blocks with the queen, I win a pawn. Block with the knight, I play e5. Blocks with the rook would be the move though, but let's check first. Let's definitely check first. I just want to keep his king in the center of the board. Is that too much to ask for? And I want you guys to keep in mind, if I'm not able, okay, he pulled the knight back, so e5 is going to hit him. But if I'm not able to do something about this, then my bishop will not be active pointing towards this pawn. Remember, you don't want to have your bishop pointing towards chains. Because he plays knight back to d2 though, a move like pawn to e5 will in fact keep his king in the center for a bit longer, because if he castles, I take, I win a free pawn. If he takes, I take and I'm winning. If he plays d5, I take, takes, now my bishop prevents his king from castling. I really like my position. Like this is how, oh god, he castled. So he chose to lose the pawn. Yeah, he chose to lose the pawn, but this is what they mean by the bishop pair. The bishop here is very strong. He castle, let's take the pawn. He is forced to move his queen, and then I'm probably going to play c5 and accept the fact that my bishop is not good, but there is this diagonal for my bishop. Keep in mind, guys, bishops needs long diagonal. Okay, I was thinking of playing c5, but then my that would be the worst queen ever, because how do I bring back my queen in the game? Unless I'm going to play queen c3 here, and if takes, takes, I hit the knight. And you could say I have a pass pawn. Or should I just be patient and play bishop to b7? Like not playing b5 just yet, just bishop to b7, knowing that I'm going to eventually play c5. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go bishop to b7 here. And if I have to play c5, then so be it. It's not like my queen is going to get trapped. I definitely have queen c3 as a worst case scenario move, if you may say. So I'm ahead by a pawn. That's an advantage. I have the bishop here. That's an advantage. Knight to f3 was played. There are three pieces attacking my pawn. There are one piece guarding the pawn. So even if I didn't want to play c5, I kind of have to play c5 here. That's not the best queen, but queen c3 will always bring the queen back in the game. Bishop takes f3. I'm not seeing what that does. h5, h4 also doesn't do anything. I was thinking, if rook to e8, I take, and if rook takes, I take the knight, then his rook is no longer going to be guarded. So if he does play rook e1 and I take, he has to play knight takes. With that being said, rook e1 is not a good move. Ooh, he did play rook e1, my fellow viewers. No, I'm actually going to take on e1. He has to play knight takes e1. If he plays rook takes e1, it's GG's. And he's 1500, so I'm assuming he's going to see it. Maybe he wasn't expecting the tactic to be there, but now he's going to expect it and he's going to take with the knight. And then his knight is not on a good square. So he did take with the knight, knight c2. Hmm, slightly worried, slightly. Let's go rook to e8 here, applying some pressure to the knight. Now I get my piece in the game. He did play knight c2 to attack my queen. Now I have to find somewhere to put the queen. I'm thinking of queen c3 takes, takes, but then he has rook to d7. His rook is on my 7th rank. I can't get to his 2nd rank. So let's just pull the queen back to a5. Now, if he plays b4, he loses this pawn. My queen is covering the e1 square. So maybe you think my queen is just not doing anything, but my queen is chilling. Now he plays knight to a3. I could check takes, knight takes. I think he wants his knight on the b5 square, but b5 actually doesn't really do anything. I'm thinking of playing h5, h4 here, just chasing his knight away, so that way I'm able to play something like bishop e4 and attack his queen. Yeah, let's go for that. Let's play h5 in this position. I also only have 2 minutes on my clock. He's actually playing fast. Knight to b5 threatens knight to d6. I did not see that threat from beforehand. So maybe a6 would have been a fine move, and that would have just kept his knight on the edge of the board. But if he does play knight b5, I hit the knight. If he still decides to play knight to d6, I takes, he takes, and then I'm losing. So let's prevent knight to d6 first. Let's play rook to e6, preventing. Or do I play bishop to e5? Yes, let's go bishop to e5. Now, this is kind of weird because my rook is unprotected. He could try to pin my bishop with his queen, which would be weird. The good thing is a rook is not able to go to e1. Pawn to a6 will be played on the next move, getting rid of the annoying knight. Then I'm going to play h4, attacking his knight, and I'm doing perfectly fine. Okay, he plays king to h1. Very weird. I think he wants to play knight e4, and after takes, I would have checked. So I think he's preparing the e4 square for his knight. But first, I'm going to play a6. It's definitely a6. A6 chased this knight out of my half of the board. It also chased his knight to the edge of the board. And if I play h5 and he plays knight here, I'm not going to take. I'm just going to move my bishop, and that will apply more pressure to his knight. I'm also thinking of just taking the knight. Take the knight, queen takes, check, rook takes, check, king up, and I do not have anything. Okay, I only have I only have 59 seconds on the clock. I was not expecting that. Knight e4, pawn f5, knight d2. Okay, I need to play queen c3. My queen is not really doing as much as I want her to do. I'm thinking of b5, and then after he takes, I just pull my queen back to, let's say, b6. And then if he takes, my bishop takes, and I hit the queen. But ultimately, I actually want to get my queen to e6, take on h3, because his g2 pawn is pinned. I think that's something he's going to be falling for. But that's a very, very risky move because I'm ahead by a pawn and I'm basically giving it back. So he pulls the knight back. Let's play f5, attacking the knight again, forcing the knight to move. Knight to the d2 is what I'm expecting. Oh, there is knight to g5 though. If knight g5, there should be bishop f6. Yeah, let's go bishop f6 first. Let's hit the knight. Yeah, let's go bishop f. No, I should have played bishop f4. Hit the knight, and then I'm threatening a checkmate on e1. Seriously? He puts the knight back to f3. Okay, now I'm thinking of putting my bishop here. Oh, we have to play fast. Let's not think. Let's attack the queen. The queen has to move. If he moves the queen here, I'm just gonna take double up his pawns. And if he takes my queen, I take on g2, take back on a5, and then I'm ahead by 2 pawns. If he puts the queen here, bishop c6 attacks the queen. So what will he play? I think he has to play. Okay, he plays queen d2. Let's go bishop to c6. I have to guard my rook, hit the queen. The queen has to move here. And then he puts the queen here. Okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Boom, 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 boom. Let's go queen to c. No, not queen to c3. Let's go king to f7. I'm not sure anymore. And I only have 18 seconds on the clock. This is crazy. The good thing though is now if I play bishop e4, queen e2 is not good because my rook is guarded. So let's see what he does. Knight c2, bishop to e4, hit the queen. Queen is not able. Could I? If he puts the queen, wait, did I miss a fork? That's just a fork. Please don't tell me that I missed a fork. That's just a fork. Oh, I didn't, because after rook takes, he would have took my rook. Now after rook takes, I take here. Queen takes though. I'm just gonna play queen c3, get the queens off the board. He does have a check, but I'm just gonna block with the rook. If he checks here, I'm gonna move the king to g7. His knight is under attack. Let's block with the rook. The queen has to move. The knight is unprotected. He checks. Let's move the king. The knight is unprotected. The pawn is unprotected. This knight is guarding the e1 square, but I only have 7 seconds on the clock. He moves the queen. Oh boy, let's just move the queen. That was a free pawn. 5 seconds. I have to start pre-moving. I have to start pre-moving. Okay, let's go queen here, and then I just fell for this. Oh boy, I'm talking too much. 3 seconds on the clock as well. Let's give a check. Pull this back. I want to just get the queens off the board. Yeah, that's the plan. Let's pre-move it. Then I check, and then let's take. He lost on time. That's crazy. We're going to be doing the same thing against 1,600 players. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 1,600 region. He plays e4. We're still going to be playing more PIRC defense. Now, after d4, we go knight f6, hit the unprotected pawn. He guards the pawn. Now we play g6, and we're just going to be going for our normal setup, bishop g7, castle or king. He develops his bishop. Let's go bishop g7. I've seen a lot of persons play queen d2 with the idea of playing bishop to h6. Not a bad plan. He plays f3. Now let's castle. This is a decent idea. It's also an indication that they're trying to castle on the queen side and they also want to play bishop h6. So one thing I've told my students is whenever you see this, playing a move like rook to e8 is fine. And then you can always meet bishop h6 with bishop h8. Now he castles on the queen side and we castle our king on the king side. It will be a crazy game. So basically, he's going to start his attack on my king, and I need to start my attack on his king. I have two minor pieces that needs development. He has two minor pieces that needs development. I can't just play too many natural moves here. Like knight d7 would be fine, but I want to play pawn to c6 in this position. And based on how long you've been watching this video, you should understand the purpose behind c6. The purpose of c6 is actually to play moves like b5, a5, b4, so that way I could start my pawn storm on his side where the king is on. So I'm expecting h4, h5 here. And I'm sure he's expecting b5, b4. So he develops his bishop first. He's pretty principled. So maybe I need to develop my knight first. But hey, we're going to be going for the attack. Eventually, I will develop my knight, but we have to be aggressive. We also have to show that we're trying to be aggressive. For example, if he plays a move like a3, that's actually bad. If you're using the perk and you see someone play a3, then B4 is going to get even easier to play. Yo, I'm not going to lie though. This guy's actually playing very, very principled chess. Like he's actually completing his development before he starts his storm. But I just want to start my storm. But I'm going to develop. I'm going to finish my development. Don't worry. Like the plan here is actually to play bishop a6 to trade off this bishop for this bishop. And this knight on b8 is going to go to d7. And maybe I'm going to play e5. But sometimes I like to keep my bishop on this diagonal. I don't necessarily want. Okay, so he plays h4. This is where the game gets spicy. He's trying to play h5. I'm going to play what is called prophylaxis move or a prophylactic move, which is h5. I'm going to be playing h5 myself, and this is something that you guys could adopt. Where once you play h5, it makes g4 harder for them and it makes h5 harder for them. Now, if you're playing against someone which is super mega ultra aggressive, they're probably still going to play g4. And then when you take, they play h5, just trying to completely open everything, which is what he's doing. So, and I think the reason why he's doing it is because this is actually a matter of whose attack is faster. But let's take on g4. I think he's going to play h5 here. Okay, he plays e5 instead. So now his bishop is coming in the game. We'll have to do some calculation now. So, okay, what if I don't move the knight? What if I take his knight? He takes my knight. I take his knight. He takes my pawn. I take his pawn. I'm chilling. Or I take his pawn. He takes my pawn. A lot of pieces now able to get to the d4 square. So that could be a difference. So let's take his pawn here. And then if he takes my knight, I take his knight. And then once he takes back, because I'm attacking the rook, then I'll take back. And then we'll deal with what's happening. So it looks like his attack reached a bit faster than mine because my development is also not yet complete. But I'm the one with the material. So I want you guys to understand when it comes to evaluating a chess position, piece activity and material goes hand in hand. So the player who has the material, you could say they're winning because it's material. The player who has the piece activity, you could also say they're winning because it's piece activity. So basically, it's the person who is able to use their piece activity or their material better will win the game, basically. So now he plays knight f4. I think some ideas of e6 is coming in. I have to be careful here. Like I'm still thinking of b4, but I know he's gonna play knight here. Now I'm thinking of just knight g4, hit the bishop. I think he should play e6. And then after e6, I takes, knight takes, bishop takes. Then I have to go rook to f8. And I think I will be safe. Let's go for that. Let's go knight g4, hit the bishop. So being ahead by 2 pawn, is definitely worth playing a few defensive move. But you have to be able to know how to defend. The good thing about the Pirc is if you have the dark squared bishop and you get rid of the opponent's dark squared bishop, it's very, very unlikely that the opponent's attack is gonna pull through. Like they have to be super aggressive. And this guy is actually playing. I think this is the most aggressive way in which you're going to be seeing the Pirc. And I also wanted to be aggressive. Maybe if I had played knight to d7 instead of a5, you could see I developed something and my knight would be covering the e5 square. But I'm honestly chill here. Okay, so he gets his rook on the file. He's applying some pressure to my knight here. If I takes, he has queen takes. But I'm just gonna take on e5 because that's a pawn. This guy's very kind. Like I'm covering the square so much. Let's just take. My bishop is guarding my knight, so that's good. Like, and one other thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is I'm not just taking these pawns because I'm this greedy person who likes to take pawns. It's like what if I'm ahead by 3 points, right? And I notice that he's attacking me. It's gonna be easier for me to defend because for one, I have more pieces to defend, and two, if I have to sacrifice material in order to simplify the game, then it's also gonna be easier for me. For example, what if I'm ahead by 3 points and his attack is just so crazy, I have to sack a piece to go into the end game? It's gonna be mean that the end game is going to be equal. Or even if I have to give up 2 pawns to go into the end game, it's basically going to be meaning that I'm ahead by a pawn. Oof. Oof, I told you guys, this is the most aggressive way in which someone can play against the Pirk. But I'm all for it. Like, I'm sure I'm doing fine here. My knight is preventing his rook from really doing anything. So let's just take here. There's no checks on my king here. If he takes, then my rook is going to be under attack, and I'm just going to play rook to f8. And I have so many pieces around my king. Like, this, I'm really just safe here. But I'm not gonna lie, like, let's be honest. Nobody wants to be playing chess with their minor pieces just chilling on the back rank like this. Let me just move my rook out the way. And if I get a chance to develop my pieces, I'm gonna develop my pieces. I think moving the rook was bad actually. I think I could have actually took on if yo, I think I could have take, because then if he takes my rook, I take his nah. Never mind. Never mind. Rook f8 is fine. So he decides to play queen to d3. That's also more pawns. But I know you guys are probably saying, This guy's just that greedy. Why should I listen to this guy? All he does is take free pawns." Now, I'm thinking of playing f2. Like, I think I need to include f2 in case I need to queen the pawn to distract some of his pieces. F2, if bishop takes, rook or knight takes is good. Queen to d3 suggests that there's only one check, and then once I move, there's nothing. Pawn to f3, assuming he moves his rook to g2, then I take, and then I'm hitting both the knight and the bishop, and that's f4. Let's hit him with f2. No, I was kind of expecting him to sacrifice the rook. He's sacrificing everything. I mean, we have to take. Let's take the rook. I guess he wants to play h5 followed by h4. That has to be a bit too slow. I mean, f1 is actually a threat in the position. Maybe not now because it's been guarded twice, but taking this is also a threat. Okay, he checks my king. What now? What do you have now that my king is hiding in the corner? Plus, his bishop is actually sheltering my king from anything. Now, a fancy move like queen g6 is not going to help him because I'm going to queen the pawn and then take his rook. That's more material. And if he takes, I trade the queens off the board and then queen the pawn. So, I don't know. Looks like GG's to me. Okay, so he's just sacrificing the bishop. And if I take the bishop, yeah, it's just a bishop. I think queen to g3 forks, but rook to f5 guards them both. So let's just take here. He just has nothing. I think he's just trying to be ultra aggressive, but that's not how it works. Now he plays rook to g1. We're now ahead by 8 points. What's my plan here? Take on d4. Guard the bishop, threaten to trade the queens. If he trades queen, I take and attack his knight, which means if he takes my bishop, I take his knight. So he still does not get anything. Let's take the pawn. This is completely winning. And if he moves his queen too far, queen to d2 could be a dangerous threat. Okay, he plays queen to g6. Now, check, king over. I do not have any checkmate. He's also attacking my bishop. And if I move my bishop, I'm going to be checkmated. Now, if I play rook to f6, there is queen takes g4, and then I play rook back to f1 with check because the rook guards the queen, and if the rook takes, I take the queen. So he has to block with the knight. Wait. Hit the queen, takes, check, block, and then I take the knight with check, right? And if the queen takes, I take the queen, and if the rook takes, I take his bishop, and then I have a rook and two pieces, and he only has a rook. Oh, but then if I go here, he checks. And then I block the check, hit the queen, and his rook is under attack. Let's go here. Okay, so he checks on e8, which I saw. His rook is unprotected, by the way, and my king is in check. That's a free bishop, by the way. But once I block the check, his queen and his rook is going to be under attack at the same time. So that's just a double attack. Now, it doesn't really matter where he puts his queen or if he takes this pawn. I'm just going to take a free rook. So he moves his queen back to g6, We grab the free rook with check. He has to move his king, seeing that blocking the check is mate. And then now we're just going to be searching for a checkmate, which is definitely in the position. And he resigns. We're going to be playing more PIRC defense against 1700 players. Stick around. Our opponent is in the 1700 region. He plays e4. We're going to be playing more PIRC defense. Knight c3, we go knight f6. It's the same idea. We're just going to fianchetto our bishop, finish our setup. Bishop to c4 was played. Let's fianchetto. Let's finish our setup very quickly. It's a good opening. Oh, he plays f4. This is like a Vienna type, Grand Prix type structure. But again, it's a line that you can play against anything. Develops his knight, we castle our king. And after he castles his king, it's actually the same idea where we sacrifice our knight on e4. And then after his knight takes, we play pawn to d5, fork it back, and we get immediate equality. And I've seen some players sacrificing their bishop on f7. It doesn't work. It's the same thing. We're just gonna take, and if he wants to sacrifice his bishop on f7 and give me the bishop here, that's on him. So he took. Let's play d5, forking back the pieces. This is an idea that you guys definitely have to keep in mind. Now, bishop to d3 is the move here. I mean, I don't see anything apart from bishop to d3, but then I'm just gonna take, and once he takes back, I continue with my development. Okay, he decided to take on d5, so let's just take. This basically means I have the bishop here, and having the bishop here is definitely an advantage. My queen is under attack. I just need to find a good square for my queen. Usually a square like a5 is good because we can always play c6 and pull our queen back to c7. D6 was also a good square for the queen. Yeah, d6 was definitely a good square, but now I'm just gonna finish my development. Okay, he plays queen to d2. He's attacking my pawn on e7. Let's go knight c6. I develop my knight. I guard my pawn. Regular stuff. My next move is bishop to g4, so he needs to play h3. If he plays h3, what will I play? Maybe e5. So he plays knight to e4. I think he wants to play pawn to c3 and pawn to d4. Yeah, I'm positive that's what he's trying to do. But let's continue with our plan. Let's go bishop to g4, pinning the knight. And once, okay, he actually didn't play c3. He plays d3, which is bad because now I'm able to apply pressure to the pinned knight and attack the queen. So his entire king side is about to go in shambles. Because once he moves the queen and I take, I'm not sure how I'm going to take this knight, but once I take the knight, he's going to be forced to take with the pawn. Okay, he pulls the queen back, which means he is still pinned. With that being said, I'm not in it. Well, I am in a rush because he's threatening to just go back and guard it. So do I takes? Yes. Yes, that's what we do. Let's take. Once he takes, we go bishop h3, hit the rook. And if he moves his rook to f2, we win the rook. So he has to move his rook to e1. If he moves his rook to e1, check, king h1, and I don't have anything. But the guy did not even move the rook. He's trying to be fancy. He's like, offense is the best defense. But that's not how chess works. And because now I'm able to hit him with queen to b6, checking his king. His rook is still under attack. And if he blocks with his rook, he puts his rook on the same diagonal as his king, which means I'm able to hit him with bishop to d4. And just like that, we're winning an exchange. He plays queen to e2. Am I in a rush to take this rook? No. So what do we do? Whenever we see a good move, what do? We look for a better one. I'm actually going to play queen takes b2, attacking the unprotecting rook, forcing him to respond to this. Then I'll take his rook. I have to be careful though, because if I allow him to play bishop to e3, then I'll no longer be winning a rook. But if bishop e3, no, I'll just take his rook. So he has to move the rook first. So he moves the rook to c1. That's a free pawn, but we can't take that pawn because of bishop here. So now we take, we're ahead by an exchange. He took with the queen. That's a free pawn. And the reason why I'm grabbing this pawn is because my a pawn is now passed. So it's very easy to formulate a plan when you have a passed pawn because we know the saying, passed pawns must be pushed. He is attacking my bishop. Let's just pull it back to f5 actually because who wouldn't trade in this position? I'm ahead by what? 4 points. I have a pass pawn. My king is safe. What is wrong with my position? And look at my position, guys. Like, I literally only made two pawn moves. I only moved the D pawn and I only moved the G pawn. So if your pawn moves are not like pawn storms or pawn breaks or some plans that you have, you don't necessarily need to be moving a lot of pawns in the opening. Well, he plays h4. Guess he wants to play h5, but that's way too slow. Let's start rolling the pass pawn. Pass pawns must be pushed. Like, I could also try to get my rooks in the game, but I'm actually not seeing the use for that. So let's just keep rolling the pawn. If he takes, I'm just going to take with the f pawn. Like, I could take with the h pawn, but bishop c3, queen here, that's a little checkmating trick that he's trying to set up. So I'm just going to take with the f pawn, and he has no light squares bishop to check my king, so I'm fine. So he took. Let's take with the f pawn. We're going to keep rolling the pass pawn up the board. Like, if his move is not an attacking move, I'm just going to roll the pass pawn. Queen to h4. Is it an attacking move? It hits the pawn. Okay, I think he wants to play knight g4 and be annoying. So let's get rid of the knight. We're ahead in material. We're going to be trading. Now he's attacking my pawn here. Now, I could definitely allow him to take that pawn to gain some time. But okay, let's push the pass pawn. Pass pawns must be pushed. If he takes the pawn, I have rook f7, I have queen f7, and once I move my queen, I'll be continuing to roll my pass pawn. So now he plays f5. Now he's being aggressive, aggressive. So I'm actually going to move my queen all the way back to f7, not because I'm scared of his attack or anything, but it does defend g6. But I actually want to move my queen out the way so I can continue rolling my pawn up the board. If he takes, my queen takes with check. He moves the king. I roll the pawn. So he plays king to g2. Let's continue with the plan. Let's roll the pawn. He needs to play bishop to c3 or rook to e1 in this position. Bishop to c3, that's a nice way to do it. Now, I want to take here, but it seems very risky. If I takes, he check, I block. If I takes, any check that, yeah, let's just take the pawn. Let's not be scared. Any check that he plays, I'll block the check. If he takes, I'll just take back. And if he allows me to play rook a6, then this rook can actually swing in the defense and attack his king at the same time. So he plays king to h3 because he wants to play rook to g1, but let's just play rook to a6. If rook to g1, I'll just block the check and there will be no more attack here. He gave the check. Let's just block with the rook. He took. If I take with the pawn, that's mate, by the way. So I have to take like this. And then my opponent resigns. We're going to be using more PIRC defense against players at the 1800 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1800. He started off with e4, more PIRC defense coming your way. He plays d4. Let's go knight f6, hit the pawn. We know the regular setup that we're going for. He guards the pawn. We're going to play g6. We're going to fianchetto our bishop. We're going to castle our king. He develops his knight. Let's fianchetto the bishop. Now he plays bishop to c4. Now keep in mind, when you see the bishop on c4 and this pawn on e4, there is knight takes e4 sacrificial idea. But remember what I tell you guys, it's best to do this with your king out the center of the board. So now that I castle my king and then he castle his king, knight takes e4 is just the move in this position. Very, very, very thematic. I mean, if you watch the video this far, you should have already guessed that move. After knight takes, we play d5, forking here. Bishop back to d3, that's usually the main move. And now we just take. And then after the bishop takes, he's applying a lot of pressure to my pawn on b7. Now, I'm thinking of playing pawn c5, but he could honestly just take the pawn, to be honest. So let's play pawn to c6, just so that way his bishop is not as active. And then, as you guys know, the light squared bishop is usually the weakest minor piece in the PIRC defense. So if we're able to play bishop g4 to get rid of the bishop or bishop e6 to d5, then that would put us in good shape. Now, he did play bishop to e3. Let's develop our bishop to g4, hitting the knight. The knight is one of the defenders of his d4 pawn, but I do not think we're going to be winning the d4 pawn. But let's get rid of the knight now. He's able to take with the queen. That's a good move. And I could, no, I can't. Taking the pawn is bad. If I take the pawn, he swings the rook over, my bishop is pinned, and I lose the game. So let's just focus on our development for now. At least I could say I finished my development. This is PIRC defense. After pawn c3, I'm going to play the move pawn to e5. If you're a PIRC defense player, pawn to e5 is definitely going to be one of the thematic moves in the PIRC. Now, he could play pawn to d5, but if he plays pawn to d5, I'm going to play f5, chase away the bishop, followed by e4, chase away the queen, and then I figure out how I'm going to do it. So he decides to play rook to d1. If I takes, there's bishop takes. I mean, I'm fine after that. I think he still wants to push. I still have ideas of playing f5, hit the bishop. Bishop has to go to c2, e4, hit the queen. Queen has to move. But I'm not really seeing fully how it helps. So let's just go queen to e7 here. f5 followed by e4 is still a plan, but my development is complete. I want to ensure that I connect my rooks. I want to put a rook on the e file because the e file is going to be, it's very likely that the e file is going to be open. But if I play f5 followed by e4, then the d file is where we're going to be putting our rooks. So he did play d5, was expecting that move. Let's play f5, hit the bishop. He could play d6, by the way, and attack my queen. But personally, I think if he plays d6 and attack my queen, and I move my queen to e6, his d6 pawn is eventually going to be captured because it's just so easy for me to get to that pawn. Now, he needs to pull his bishop all the way back to c2, and then I'm going to attack his queen. And then from here, it's just going to be a normal chess position. He did pull the bishop back to c2. Now we're going to play pawn to e4, attacking the queen. Now he's forced to move the queen. And after he moves the queen, I'm just thinking of centralizing my knight. I am thinking of pawn to f4 as well. He plays queen to g3, so pawn to f4 isn't really good. And then even if I play bishop to e5, he will be able to play bishop to f4. So let's just play knight to e5 here. So he plays d6. Now, d6 attacks my queen. It's a very interesting move, and I have to be careful where I put my queen because his bishop is on c2, and it is possible he may want to put his bishop on b7. So here's what I'm going to do. For now, I think my queen is best placed on d7. I need to move my king to h8 so that way I just never have to worry about a bishop coming here. He plays h4. Why h4, you may ask? I think he wants to play h5, but that's not going to be, that's definitely not a huge threat. I'm thinking of knight to g4, apply some pressure to his bishop. Now, because I'm scared of this diagonal, I'm going to start by moving my king to h8. He moves the bishop to f4. My knight is under attack twice, so I have to be a bit careful there. I'm thinking of playing knight to c4 here, but I do not have any intention of winning the d6 pawn. In fact, let me just play rook to e8. It's best if I get all my pieces in the game first. Then he plays rook to d2. Now, I think he's playing a bit better now. Well, not after rook to d2, but his ideas. He's trying to ensure that he uses all his pieces. But the pawn is unprotected. The rook on d2 is a target. Knight c4, that looks like a pawn. And I'm definitely going for it. Let's go knight c4. I'm thinking of playing e3, but ooh, rook to d4. Okay, if rook, I'm not gonna take. Because if takes, if he manages to get a bishop here once I take, then I move my king, bishop here. I think I'm going to be losing material. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do not want to be too greedy. Wait, let's look on it again. If I take, or maybe I just need to be careful. Let's take. Let's actually take. This is very, very risky because I do not have the main piece that's going to help me to defend, which is my dark squared bishop. But once I don't allow a bishop here, I should be good. Push, pawn takes. Okay. Okay, let's go rook f6 here. Rook f6 attacks the d6 pawn. I'm trying to win the d6 pawn. Okay, it's not rook f6 because he has a dark squared bishop and I'm putting my pieces on dark squares. How smart. Now all he needs to do is chase away my knight, and once my knight moves, he pins. But luckily, I'm still gonna be ahead by a pawn because if I have to give back the rook, I'm gonna be getting his dark squared bishop, and this pawn is gonna be mine, and this d4 pawn is gonna be an isolated pawn. So I think I'm still better. But he decided to play immediate bishop to E5. Now my knight is able to take. What is this? Knight takes. And if pawn takes, I go rook here. Now the pawns look dangerous, but there's no way to protect this pawn. And if this pawn is dead, then this pawn is also dead. Yeah, this is now just over. I'm ahead by 2 points. I'm about to win this pawn. It's his dark squared bishop was way more important than his light squared bishop there. There's nothing his light squared bishop could do to my position here. He swing his rook in the game, but let's just take the pawn. No, I'm going to take the pawn on d6. I'm ahead by 3 points, by the way. He plays h5, was expecting that move, but that's another pawn. Now I'm ahead by 4 points. Now, once he takes, I could take with the queen, actually. But let's take with the pawn just to keep my pawns guarded. I'm going to go maybe queen f6, followed by pawn to f4, and then I'm going to have a very nice attack on his king. Here he checks, but that's just a check. Let's just move the king. I can also go rook to h8 and attack his queen. And my queen is pointing towards h2, so he could also be getting checkmated. Rook to e3. He wants to play rook to h3, but let's play rook to h1 ourselves, forcing him to move the queen. And he's probably going to move the queen here. Oh, he puts the queen here. That makes some sense. Let's play queen to f6. The idea is to play g5 hits the queen, followed by f4 hit the rook. Now, I could be winning even more material, all depending on what he plays. There's also rook to h4, which attacks his queen. Now he plays rook to h3. He's trying to trade the rooks off the board, which I have no issues with. Let me start by playing pawn to g5, though, just forcing him to move his queen away. And then I'll take the rook. Like, this is just winning. Like, there's just a lot that I could do to win this game. And he also has a minute on his clock. Okay. He plays rook to g3. Interesting move. There's two pieces attacking my g5 pawn. I'm only guarding it once, and he's applying pressure to my pin pawn. But that will not be an issue because I have king to g6. Now, my king is playing a very good role in this position. You may think my king is weak, but I do have pawns in front of my king. And I'm not able to take his queen just yet. But if he's not going to move his queen, then there's no way for him to move his rook. And then I'm going to just play moves like rook to c5 or even rook to d5, and I'm doing fine. So he plays bishop to b3. Again, we're not able to take. Well, let's just play rook to c5 here. Let's play rook to c5. I'm not able to play rook to c1 though, because his queen is there. He has 18 seconds on the clock. That's bad. He puts the rook back on h3, but now there's no pins, which means that's just a queen. And if he takes, I'm just going to be taking back, and we're just completely winning. I'm just waiting on his time to be running out here. Pulls the bishop back. Let's pin the bishop. He lost every single piece. Moves the king. I could take, but I actually want to checkmate him. If I takes, he has king up. So I'm going to play f3, preventing his king from running away. Taking on f3. Now his king has nowhere to go. I think he wants to go here, but once I put my queen here, taking on d1 is going to be a forced checkmate, but he lost on time. But we're going to be playing more PIRC defense against 1900 players, so stick around. Our opponent is in the 1900 level. We're still going to be playing more pure defense against e4. Let's play pawn to d6. He plays d4 here. We're going to be doing the same thing, knight to f6. We're just trying to finish our setup. He plays knight c3 to guard the pawn. Now I'll play g6. The plan is to go bishop g7, get the king out the center of the board. Okay, now he plays f3. Let's go bishop to g7. F3 is usually a sign that they're going to be castling on the queen side. And whenever, let's just castle here. Whenever someone castles on the queen side on the PIRC, you should be happy because it's actually pretty fun to attack when they castle on the queen side. Now, one thing I talk about a lot in this series is whenever you see the queen and the bishop on this battery, they're trying to put the bishop on h6. They're trying to get rid of your good bishop. So let's just play rook to e8. And we're trying to meet bishop h6 with bishop h8. Now, after castle, h4, h5 is the threat. And they castle on the queen side. Our king is on the king side. It is going to be a crazy game. In order to start our attack, we're going to start by playing the move Is it pawn to c6? Pawn e5 take. No, let's go knight d7 first. We have to develop. Let's not forget about our development. And I'm also kind of preventing e5. But eventually, I'm going to play pawn c6, pawn b5, pawn a5, pawn a4, pawn b4, and start my attack along his queen side. I could also play pawn to c5 in this position. But then if he takes, bishop takes, queen takes, wins material. So it's all depending on what he plays. Well, let's see. And then he plays h4. So this is actually a very, very aggressive idea whenever they play h4. Don't allow them to play h5, by the way, because if you play knight takes g4 and they're attacking you. So I'm going to play h5 myself here. And basically, I'm preventing them from playing h5. g4 is going to be a bit harder for them to play, seeing that I have my pieces covering g4. But the very, very, very aggressive players, they still play g4. And then after takes, then they play h5. Now, usually it's not nothing alarming and I'm going to be like, okay, if he does this, I'm going to lose. But it is something that you have to keep in mind. So he plays the move bishop to e2. g4 is coming on the next move. Now, the good thing about this is if he plays g4, I could also just ignore the threat because if g5, I'm safe. If he takes, I'm able to play knight takes. So let's just play c6 here. I'm going to play b5 and I'm going to start my own attack. If he plays g4, we're just not gonna respond or react to what's happening. So g4 was played. Let's play b5. If he push, we simply move the knight. It's harder for him to attack us. If he takes, we simply play knight takes, and it's gonna take a while for him to break through. He did decide to play g5. Now that he plays g5, there's no bishop coming in, there's no rooks coming in. I am safe. Now, what he got for this is my knight is on h7, and I will have to get this knight back in the game because I don't want to keep my knight on h7. But eventually, I'll play moves like knight f8, knight e6, get the knight in the game. He puts his knight on the edge of the board. The knight is heading to f4 though. And I actually have a very nice move here. It is a pure defense idea. And I'm going to play the move queen to a5. Now, queen to a5 could slow down your attack if you're not careful how it works. So if I play queen to a5, I'm actually threatening to play the move pawn to b4, chase away his knight, win the pawn on a2 because the knight guards a2. Now, if you play the move queen to a5 and the opponent is able to safely play king b1 and b4 does not help, then queen to a5 is not good. But in this case, if I play queen a5 and he plays king b1, pawn to b4 actually traps his knight because the knight has no good squares to go. So we are going to play the move queen to a5. It's such a good move. Like I didn't really calculate what he could do, but I just know that king b1 doesn't work. And if he plays pawn to a3, I may still get the chance to play pawn to b4. But pawn to a3 could be a move. Now, if he plays a3, I don't think I'm going to immediately play b4 because all he needs to do is move the knight and then my b pawn is just going to be pinned because my queen is unprotected. But if he plays a3, then that's an automatic hook. And a hook basically means we're going to be using the opponent's pawn to open lines on his king. So after a move like pawn to a3, we pull the queen back to c7, hit him with a5, then hit him with b4. And after pawn takes, this rook gets the open file, and that's when the attack is going to start. And that's why he decided to play the move pawn to b3. Now, let me explain the idea behind pawn to b3, which is bad, by the way, because, hey, this dark squared bishop is going to wreak havoc in his position. But if I play b4, he's going to play the move knight to a4, and I don't really have anything. But he plays b3, which means he weakens the dark squares, pointing towards his king. And I also get a hook from this b3 pawn. So I could now play pawn a5, followed by pawn a4. I am considering queen to a3 check. Now, after he moves the king, what do I have? If I hit the knight, he's still gonna go there. Now I don't know what my queen is doing anymore. So I think I need to just move my, or I could check, king move, a5, right? No, queen c1, queen b4, pawn a3. My queen is trapped. Queen b6, there's d5 hits the queen. I need to play a5, a4. I need to just find a decent square for my queen though. So let's go queen back to c7. We already provoked the weakness, basically. This should be your goal when you're attacking someone's king. Like your goal is to try your best to get them to move pawns on the side that his king is on. Now, this does not mean I'm winning or I'm completely winning or anything. The guy could do his own stuff like f4, f5, but I'm personally, I'm not seeing what he has, but let's see. Knight f4, where's the knight heading? I don't know. Pawn e5 is definitely a possibility, but then, I don't want to really trade the bishops. Eventually, I may play c5 when the time is right. Not now because I'm going to lose the pawn. I have to keep drawbacks in mind, not seeing where the knight is going. Maybe he wants to go here. Let's continue with our attack. And yes, I'm not developing my light squared bishop, but if you watched up to this far, you know that the light squared bishop is like one of the worst pieces. There's nowhere to put the bishop. He sacrificed his knight. I understand why he would sacrifice the knight there, but no, I'm just going to take the knight and I'm just ahead by a piece. F4, he's going to take this next. But then what next? Like, what happens after he takes on h5? I don't think that is good. But let's continue with our plan because there's no way to guard this. So let's play pawn to a5. He just donated a knight that we're going to take. Now, maybe we need to be slightly careful. Bishop takes, pawn g6 takes, bishop takes. Okay, he plays b4. That's not a bad move. I was no, I wasn't expecting b4 because now my rook will not get the file. Maybe he wants to play a3 though, and then just close up everything. The good thing is I should be able to play c5 sometime. Not sure when, because I'm gonna lose b5. Maybe bishop a6, pawn a3, pawn c5. Let him win a free pawn. Who cares? It's just a pawn. And then I get some open lines. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go with that. Let's go bishop a6. Plus, if bishop a6 and he takes, now c5 is possible because my b5 pawn is guarded. But I wasn't expecting him to play b4. I'm not going to lie. Like, my rook just is not in the game anymore. I'm kind of conflicted after bishop takes h5 if I should allow g6 or if I should play knight f8 to prevent g6. I may actually play knight f8 to prevent g6 because I already said I wanted to prevent g6, but I don't want to be passive. I'm very, very conflicted. Let's just decide when he plays the move. He did play the move. Now, if I play c5, he plays g6. I have to take. He takes, hit the rook. And then I have to move my rook. Drama, drama. Don't like that. Knight f8, no g6. Knight f8, f4, g6. There's f6. Let's go knight f8. Let's prevent g6. This is called a prophylactic move. What is a prophylactic move? Seeing what the opponent wants to do and preventing it. Now, once he moves his bishop, I think he should just move his bishop and try to push this pawn up the board. But at the end of the day, I'm ahead by a piece, and c5 is coming. My dark squared bishop is going to be the main character of this entire chess game. He did play f5. f6 is probably coming. I definitely need to be a bit careful. Or maybe he just wants to play g6. I don't know. But we have to counterattack. Oof. If I play c5, the knight gets the d5 square though. And then my queen is under attack. Hmm. Where do I put the queen? Back to d8. f6. We have to attack. We have to go c5. We just have to go c5. And this is definitely a crazy game. I'm not gonna lie. The knight did get the d5 square. I have to be super careful. f6 is coming. g6 is coming. Let's go queen to d8 actually. So that way, if he plays f6, I takes, and if knight takes, I takes, and I'm safe. But he will have the g file pointing towards my king. Now, again, I'm conflicted again. Do I continue with my attack or do I just switch back over and defend against all of his threats? Who knows? At the end of the day, I'm ahead by a piece. I'm actually seeing something. If f6 takes, if I go knight takes, bishop g5 pins. Oh, but then I have knight takes e4, hit the knight, and if he takes my queen, I take his queen. That would be nice. Yeah, that would be very, very nice. That's some nice calculation there. But what if he tries to exchange everything here? My whoa, he sacrificed again. This guy is ultra aggressive. I mean, the best way to refute a sacrifice is by accepting it. I'm now ahead by 3 points. He plays queen to e2. The queen is coming to h5 with check. Queen h5, I have king back. If pawn g6, my knight guards the square, so I'm fine. I'm probably gonna play pawn to e6 in this position. I think I just need to defend here. Pawn e6 hits the knight. If he checks, I go back. The knight is still under attack. If he takes, I play rook takes, and he has nothing. If g6, I go back. There's no f6. Let's just play well, e6 opens the file for the rook, so it's weird. But I just have so many pieces around my king, defending my king. I definitely need to be careful here. I'm not gonna act like I'm safe and everything is fine. I need to be careful here. But being ahead by 2 pieces, I just have more pieces than him. Except my bishop on a6 is not doing anything. It's just pointing towards my own pawn. Would be better on b7. My rook on a8 is not doing anything, pointing towards my own pawn. Would be better on c8. But let's see how he continue with this aggressive attack. I'm assuming he's going to sacrifice the knight or something else. I was expecting that check. Let's just pull the king back. If g6, there's no mate because my knight is there. If f6 attacks the bishop, I'm just going to take the knight because we want to trade. Yo, look at this. If he plays f6, he's actually threatening f7, and that's a checkmate. So if f6 takes, okay, this is very tricky. If he plays f6 and I take, and then he takes back the pawn, it's legit the same thing. The good thing is I'm ahead by 2 pieces. With that being said, I have to start sacrificing back some material, and I think he's gonna find f6. Okay, he didn't find f6. He plays knight to f6. And I was about to say the other good thing is he only has 1.5 minutes on the clock. But f6 would have been a very, very nice move. He plays knight to f6 instead. He was worried too much about his knight. Now, I can't move the king. I have to take the knight. The question is, how do I take the knight? I have to keep my bishop. So it's knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. If rook over queen f7, attack the queen. And obviously, he's not going to trade. So let's take the knight. Once he takes, my queen takes. Bishop to g5, rook to g8. I don't care what he plays. I'm going to play queen to f7 with the idea of trading the queens off the board. And I will be safe. So he did play rook to g8, and I'm thinking if I play queen f7, he probably has queen h6, which is not really as threatening. Now, as we speaking, I think there's bishop to h6, but I have rook to a7, luckily. I'm also thinking of taking here. I'm also thinking of taking here. I could do a lot of stuff. I'm just trying to find the best way to do it. So I'm probably just going to take here. And then I'm expecting bishop a6. And then I'm going to play rook here to guard g7. Yeah, let's do that. Let's take. If pawn takes, I'm going to take his bishop. So that's something. Bishop here, there's always queen f7. What if he sacked the rook? I think he's going to sack the rook. Like, he's notorious for sacrificing pieces. I'm not going to lie. This guy is decent. But if he sack the rook, I'm going to take. If he swing over the other rook, I'm going to block with the knight. He's definitely going to sack the rook. Just by his playing style, he's going to sack the rook. But you can tell that this guy does a lot of. I knew he would have sacrificed the rook. I just knew it. So I have to take because the best way to refute a sack is by accepting it. But the good thing is, once his rook joins, I just need to block the check with my knight. Now, if I block the check with my knight, he is able to check somewhere on h6. But once he does that, I'm just going to move. So queen to h6 check, that's a nice move, by the way. It's, let's not underestimate that move. I have to go to f7. I'm ahead by 7 points, by the way. That's the good thing about my position. I'm ahead by 7 points. So if I have to give back some material, we're definitely going to do that. Queen h7, definitely not the best way to do things, because once I block with the queen, you could say it's attacking his queen. And if he takes and then play h5, I'm only losing a knight. Like, he has to win like my queen here. Even if he wins my rook, I'm still going to be ahead in material. Queen to h5 is attacking my pawn and f5. I'm probably just going to take, and if queen f5, I block with the queen, right? Yeah, let's do that. Let's just take. If queen to f5, we block the check with the queen. If okay, let's block the check with the queen. He cannot trade. Whatever he do, he cannot and should not trade, which is why he puts the queen back over there. Now, there was this check on d5 that I didn't really like. So I'm going to just pull my bishop back to b7 to prevent that check on d5 because initially I wanted to play rook to h8. He plays rook to g5. Now we go rook to h8. He is forced to move his queen. And, we are successfully defending. The guy played very well. Queen to d7 is a check that I have to be worried about. Rook to f5 is also a threat to pin my queen, but bishop to c8 attacking the queen prevents that. Now he has to move the queen. He moves the queen here. He is attacking my rook. Okay, but let's just develop our bishop, guard the rook. I'm going to swing this rook over in the defense as well. There's no rook here. He took. Now, I could take back, but I'm just going to finally swing my rook in the game. And that's something that I like about the PIRC defense. Like, there's always pieces around your king guarding the king. He only has 2 seconds on the clock, by the way. So, he doesn't necessarily mean to be trading the queens like this. But let's just take here. Eventually, his time is just going to be running out. Rook to f5. We take. He has no more time. With that being said, we're going to be playing more players at the 2000 level. So stick around. Opponent is now in the 2000 level. Plays e4. We're still going to be playing the good old PIRC defense. Now, bishop c4 was played, but we know the plan here. Knight f6, hit the pawn, g6, bishop g7, castle. Like, we're always going to do that. That's like PIRC 101. He guards the pawn, we play g6. Like, it really doesn't matter what move they play, we're going to get our king to safety. And that's one of the good things about the PIRC defense. You can always use it, especially if you want to play a bit faster. You get out of the opening, so that way you can play the middle game a bit quicker. Then he plays f4. Yeah, whenever you see them play f4, they're trying to be aggressive with moves like e5 in the future or f5. But again, we're still going to be continuing with our regular PIRC setup, knight f3. Let's get our king out the center of the board. And then he got his king out the center of the board. Now, from here, we could go bishop to g4 and get rid of the bad bishop. I don't think it's needed though, because there's this diagonal pointing towards his king. So we could actually play moves like c6. Now, again, remember the PIRC defense is very, very flexible. Like the plans in the PIRC is you want to play c6 followed by b5, c6 followed by d5, and then you can also play e5. So he plays h3. He's basically saying no knights or bishop is going to g4, but that's fine because now we could either play d5, which would give us a very nice center, or we could play b5. Now, I think my plan is to play d5, but first I'm going to play a5. A5 is actually a thematic move in the PIRC as well, because if for some reason my knight gets to c5, there's no b4, and I was threatening to play b5, which would trap his bishop, which is why he played a4 to prevent me from doing this. Now, the question is, do I play knight d7 followed by e5, or do I play d5? I think I prefer d5 here because I'm attacking his e pawn, so he has to take, which means after takes, there's not going to be any e5 move that I have to be worrying about. And okay, well, unless he decides to give me a pawn. Like he decided to pull his bishop back. I guess at the 2000 level, they're still not able to count because I have one, two pieces attacking his e4 pawn. He only has one piece guarding the pawn. So all I need to do here is just take the pawn. Now, I'm actually wondering if I should check the king first. And then once he moves, then I take, threatening f2, threatening g3. That's actually a plan of mine. Yeah, let's do that. Let's give a check on b6. If he oh, but then he's able to play king h2. That was weird. Because once he plays king h2, takes, I'm not threatening f2 or g3. But if he puts his king on h1, yeah, he found king h2. But let's take the free pawn. We're already ahead by a pawn playing the PIRC defense. If he takes, I'm just gonna take. My rook is also gonna get the d file. But most importantly, being the principled man that I am, I'm gonna finish my development. He plays knight to g4. That's an interesting move. That has to be an interesting move. Okay, he's threatening to take on e4. Obviously, I'm not able to move my rook because f7 is gonna be hanging. We have to be aware of drawbacks. Now, what is preventing me from just taking this? A pawn is a pawn. Yes, his queen is going to get a bit active. And I'm going to regain the tempo. After queen takes, there's bishop f5, regaining my tempo. So maybe he's like, hey, okay, I'm done by a pawn, but your pieces are not yet developed. His pieces are not yet developed either. Everything is equal, except I'm ahead by a pawn. Plus, once he takes with the queen, I develop my bishop and attack his queen at the same time. The bishop actually does not belong on f5 in the PIRC defense, by the way. So usually you want to either trade off the bishop or put your bishop on a6 or something, because I'm worried about g4. I mean, if g4 is really an issue, I can always play h5, to be honest. I think, okay, rook to d8 still doesn't work. I don't want to lose this. Why not just get rid of the knight, though? Yeah, like there's a piece in my half of the board. Let's chase out the knight. Just chase out the knight. And rook to d8, or do I play knight a6? And again, guys, keep in mind, knights on the rim is still ugly and dim. But if you're going to put your knight on the edge of the board, do not keep it on the edge of the board. Bring it back into the game as quickly as possible. That's what I'm about to do. Play knight a6. Maybe he thinks, nah, he can't think anything because, knight c5 is obvious. If you're watching this video from 500 coming up, the knight usually goes to c5 a lot, especially when we play this a5 move. It's also very similar to the King's Indian defense. Now, there's only one file on the board right now, which is the D file. I want to occupy the D file. And the reason why I didn't play rook fd8 is because now I have to worry about knight e5. So he moves the queen out of the way. He basically moves the queen out of the way before I attack the queen. And you could say I'm worried about bishop to e3 hitting my queen, and then if I play knight c5, bishop e3 pins the knight. I really wanted to play knight c5, but him preparing bishop e3 definitely makes some sense. I'm wondering if I should play knight d5 here. Nah, because there's takes, takes, takes. Okay, e6 is under attack. Bishop to e4 guards it, but then he develops his knight, hit the bishop, and then I takes, rook takes, then I play e6. That's the plan. Because what I want to play, guys, is e6. But playing a move like e6 with my bishop kind of trapped, it's not a good feeling. So I'm going to play bishop to e4. It's just a good way to protect my e7 pawn. And then once he goes here, we take the knight. And for the persons who are going to comment, why are you moving the bishop so many times? Why are you giving up your bishop for a knight? That's the bad bishop in the Pirc. Anyways, bro, relax. But he played knight e5, which is not what I expected. Not what I expected at all, at all. Okay, so I don't want him to be able to play knight c3, and I haven't done something with this bishop. So, and again, if knight c5, there's bishop e3, and that's a pin. So let's continue with bishop to d5. The thing is, though, if he takes on d5, I can't take with the knight. Not sure if it's annoying or something. I have to take with the pawn because I ask my pieces what they're doing. And the knight told me that it was guarding d7. So after takes, if I take on d5, I'm going to get forked. And I'm not trying to get forked. So I'm just going to take with the pawn. Bishop to e3 is something. If bishop e3, I'm just going to pull my queen back to c7, putting it on the same diagonal as the king. We're chilling. So he did play bishop e3. Let's pull the queen back. Same line as the king. So there could be some tactics along this diagonal. The good thing is now I'm able to play knight takes d5 if he wants to trade. The bad thing is my knight is still on the edge of the board. How do I get my knight off the edge of the board? There's no c5 square because it's bishop guards. Knight c3 applies some pressure to my bishop. But that was bad. That was definitely bad. Because, okay, to take is a mistake. We've already established that. But no, once I take, for one, I didn't give up my bishop here. Two, I'm doubling up his pawns. And three, my knight now gets access to this b4 square. Can't complain. That's no longer the edge of the board. And I'm now threatening to fork on c2. So he has to play a move that prevents the fork, like a regular. Well, if rook d1, knight c2 could be a possibility to get rid of this bishop because bishops are better than knights, so we want to get rid of that bishop. But rook to d8 is coming. Like the only file on the board is the d file. We're going to be putting both of the rooks on the d file. Okay, so queen to g3 was played. Knight c2, you could still say that's a fork. Rook has to move, grab the bishop. I'm thinking of knight h5. Knight h5, queen moves, grab the knight. I mean, it's at least a pawn. That's at least a pawn. Only downside is I'm about to give up my good bishop, but I'm about to take his bishop. So I'm actually chilling, chilling. The question is though, I'm not sure if I should play knight h5 no or knight c2. I think it's knight c2 first. Because if I play knight h5, he moves the queen, or there's no more knight c2. But if I play knight c2, even if he attacks my knight, I could attack the queen. And then once the queen moves, then I take, but then he takes and the knight is guarded. How do we do this? Knight c5, queen moves. Okay, let's just go knight h5 first. I guess we're not going to be able to play knight c2 unless he plays a weird move like queen f3. But let's assume that the opponent is going to play the best move and play queen to f2. We're going to take on if. Okay, that was so bad, bro. For one, he left his bishop unprotected. Like, you guys need to be vigilant. Like, stop believing unprotected pieces on the board. When if a piece is unprotected, that's what causes the tactics in the position. All of a sudden, knight c2 is going to be winning material because the bishop is unprotected. But what did he see? What did he see? Maybe what did he see? Maybe g4? I'll just move. I'm chilling. Knight c2. Unprotected bishop hitting the rook. We're just chilling here. Yeah, now his position is falling apart. And we haven't even gotten our rooks in the game. So if this game ends without me getting my rooks in the game, just remember that in your games, you should get your rooks in the game. He pulls the queen back to f2 where it belongs. And for who is about to ask, it's actually better to lose a rook for a knight than to lose an entire bishop. Now I'm just going to take the rook first. And then after I take the rook, then I take on e5. So let's grab the rook. He has to take back because I'm threatening to escape. Now I have two pieces attacking the knight. He only has one defender, so I'm ahead by 3 points. Now I'm about to be ahead by four whole entire points. Because once he takes, I take here with check. So let's take. Now he has to move the king, assuming he's gonna play king to g1, and just a few minor things that I need to deal with. The first one is this bishop is threatening to take on h6, so let's guard our h6 pawn. The other stuff that we need to deal with is just our rooks needs to join the game. Once we get to our rooks in the game, then we're chilling. And being ahead by 4 points here, queen to g3 is just a given. There's no there's no reason, there's no way I'm not gonna play queen to g3 on the next move. If I'm able to get the queens off the board, it's over. Okay, rook to f1, was expecting that. Not attacking much. Queen to g3. We're trying to trade the pieces off the board. If he knows anything at all about chess, he shouldn't trade. He should move the queen. If you're down in material, the more you trade, you're just helping the opponent. So he needs to keep the queens on the board here. So let's assume that he knows how to play chess and plays queen e2. I'm gonna go rook to d8, just getting my okay. Queen to d2 was played instead, but why would you put the queen on d2? Like I wanted to play rook to d8. Now you're allowing me to put the rook on d8 with tempo. Ensure that you guys are using those words. Like when you're talking to your friends, I want you guys to be using these words. Like I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna gain a tempo. So that way you could say, "Hey, I'm speaking the chess language." So he plays queen to c1. I need to get this rook more in the game. I'm thinking f5, f4. My time is running out again. Something is wrong with me. Let's go. Probably should have played rook e3. Rook e3 would have been more forcing. It's on his half of the board. It attacks the bishop. Oh boy. Oh boy. I just fell for. Oh boy. Oh shoot. That was bad, Akeem. That was bad, Akeem. And I'm also going to be losing my h6 pawn. Okay, let's take. We have to. Oh God. I just fumbled this. I just fumbled the game. Because now he's hitting my rook. Okay, let's go knight e3 first. Counter-attacking his rook. So if he takes my rook, I'm actually not going to take his rook. I'm going to fork. So I'm going to let him deal with this threat first. I think knight g3 is actually a very nice find because I'm threatening knight e2. But if he plays rook e1, check takes, and I'm losing. But if he plays rook e1, at least when I move my rook, he's not going to be able to take on f7. That was very bad. I shouldn't have allowed that. But I think, okay, he plays rook to e2 instead. So he's still preventing this. Oh, but if I check, he takes, and then takes. So I still have to move. And now his rook takes, but then I go here, hit the rook. Because knight e2 is still going to be a threat. I think he needs to prevent knight e2 first. Because if he check, I go here. If he check, I sack and then check. So he check, I go here. Now knight to e3. E2 is coming. And I'm winning. I think wait, there's no, there's queen c4. I was just about to say there's no queen move. Okay, he fell for this. He fell for this. He thinks I have to move, but that's a fork. So all I need to do is sack my queen, my fellow viewers. And then once the bishop takes knight e2 check and I pick up the queen, and I'm going to be ahead by an entire rook. And if he checks here, I block with the queen, and I'm ahead by an entire rook. Queen, now we fork. The king has to move. Grab the queen. Bishop is under attack. Pawn is under attack. Its time is running out. From here, it's just completely winning. Guard my pawn. Now I just need to start rolling my pass pawn up the board. This was an intense, weird game. Let's roll the pawn. His bishop is funnily trapped. He puts the bishop here. Now we just take the bishop, queen the pawn. He resigns.